Chapter 2492. Although he was muttering to himself, it was particularly ear-piercing in the silence of the mountain peak. Watching a good show. Enter the Divine Weapon Pavilion? Don't tell me he still wants to get the only supreme artifact in the Divine Weapon Pavilion. His luck is already heaven-defying enough to obtain a supreme artifact. Now he wants a supreme artifact? How greedy. Just watch. When he comes out later, he will definitely have a disappointed and depressed expression. Everyone was discussing. Luck wasn't always that good. The 10th Elder also had a trace of ridicule in his eyes. After obtaining a supreme artifact, he began to become arrogant. Did he think he could easily obtain a supreme artifact? He was ridiculously naive. Even the white-clothed woman could not help but want to laugh. This kid, there was nothing wrong with him. Did he think that the Divine Weapon Pavilion was opened by his family? Qin Feiyang grabbed the token and embedded it in the groove of the door. The door of the Divine Weapon Pavilion immediately opened slowly. Subsequently, Qin Feiyang entered the Divine Weapon Pavilion under the gaze of countless people. Interesting. The young man lying on the back of the snow python muttered, but he did not open his eyes from beginning to end. Inside the Divine Weapon Pavilion, there were a total of 3 floors. Rows of iron shelves were neatly arranged, with long iron boxes placed on them. Each iron box was 3 meters long and half a meter wide. Just from the appearance, they were all exactly the same. It was hard to tell what kind of artifact was inside. Qin Feiyang stood in front of the door, glanced at the iron boxes on the shelves, and injected his divine sense into the token. Merit points, 15,000 points. Each entry costs 1,000 points. For others, whether it was entering the Divine Weapon Pavilion or the Divine Weapon Pavilion, it was all a gamble of luck. But for Qin Feiyang, as long as he could enter, he would definitely gain something. After putting away the token, Qin Feiyang raised his head and strode forward. He looked to the east and looked to the west. He walked along the rows of iron shelves, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. After a while, he finished the first floor and walked to the second floor. He walked through the second floor, as if he was taking a stroll, and entered the third floor. About half an hour passed. Qin Feiyang stopped at the staircase. He seemed to be waiting for something. This place was just like the deity technique treasury. No matter how you tried to figure it out, you would never be able to deduce the location of the supreme deity artifact. Because every iron box was exactly the same. Furthermore, not only could the iron box prevent the prying of divine sense, it could also block the aura of a divine artifact. It was so tight that it was impossible to tell if it was a sword, a saber, a hammer, or a spear, let alone the grade of a divine weapon. Unless he could see through the iron box. However, Qin Feiyang couldn't do that at the moment. You brat, didn't you say you wanted to keep a low profile? Why are you doing such a high-profile thing now? Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind. Keep a low profile and do things in a high-profile manner. Qin Feiyang snickered. Haha. Then I'm afraid it will be difficult for you to keep a low profile in the future. The shadowless man laughed. Actually, I've always been very low-key, okay? But if you keep a low profile, there will always be people who want to bully you. There's no other way. Qin Feiyang was helpless. Ever since he entered the Dragon God Palace, he had wanted to keep a low profile and avoid some trouble. But every now and then, someone would come looking for trouble. What could he do? Since keeping a low profile was also troublesome, then he might as well keep a high profile for once, vent the anger in his heart, and also see the wonderful expressions of the dragons. It was not a loss. Alright, as you wish. The 5th row of iron shelves on the 2nd floor, the 3rd floor, the 4th iron box from the right. The shadowless man said. Thank you. Qin Feiyang secretly thanked him, then turned and walked towards the 2nd floor saying, Speaking of which, I really want to see you. All along, the shadowless man had been helping him selflessly in the dark. There were even several times when he was in despair and helpless. It was the shadowless man who came out to comfort him, encourage him, and make him pull himself together again. Therefore, he was extremely grateful to the shadowless man. He really wanted to say thank you in person. However, the shadowless man was just like his name, without a trace. No one knew where he was, and no one knew who he was. There will be a chance. The shadowless man smiled. You big shots all like to pretend to be mysterious. Qin Feiyang was helpless. You're wrong about that. I'm not a big shot. Just like you. I'm just a speck of dust in this world. The shadowless man said with a faint smile. A speck of dust, Qin Feiyang murmured. There was no way to refute this. Very soon, Qin Feiyang followed the shadowless man's instructions and found the designated iron box. Qin Feiyang did not hesitate and directly grabbed the iron box. The next moment, he appeared outside the gate of the Divine Weapon Pavilion. He's out. Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang. To be exact, they were looking at the iron box in Qin Feiyang's hands. Qin Feiyang glanced at the crowd, put the iron box on the ground, and then slowly opened it. However, as the iron box was opened, there was no powerful aura, nor was there any bright divine light overflowing. It was as if there was just an ordinary divine weapon inside. No, it was not even comparable to the most ordinary divine weapon. This was because even an ordinary divine artifact possessed divine might. But there was no divine power in this iron box at all. Did you see it? Did you see it? This is luck. Being able to get a supreme divine technique does not mean that you can get a supreme divine weapon. Looking at it, I'm afraid that the thing inside the iron box is trash that can't even be considered a divine weapon. Everyone laughed. Everyone's luck is limited. The 10th elder snorted coldly. Although it was just a simple sentence, it was full of sarcasm. But Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear to these voices. Because he believed that the shadowless man's judgment would not be wrong. Clang! Finally, the iron box was opened. A black bead appeared in the air. The bead was about the size of a pellet. Not only was it simple and unadorned, but it also did not have the aura of a divine weapon. Just this broken bead? At first glance, I can tell that it's a cheap item. Everyone's eyes were full of disdain. It was a waste to get such a thing for 1,000 merit points. However, the woman in white stared at the black bead with a trace of surprise in her eyes. It seemed to be somewhat familiar. Qin Feiyang took out the bead and looked at it curiously for a while. Then he cut his finger and dripped his blood to recognize it as its owner. Buzz! When the blood dripped on the bead, the originally simple and unadorned bead suddenly emitted a bright divine light. What? Everyone, who was full of disdain before, suddenly had a face full of surprise. This divine light, compared to a pinnacle divine weapon, no. It was more dazzling than a legendary divine weapon. No way. This was a supreme divine weapon. How could it be? Everyone shook their heads. The 10th elder was also extremely surprised at this moment. Looking at Qin Feiyang at this time, there was a trace of incomparable excitement in his eyes. Because the moment the blood merged with the bead, a message poured into his mind. Supreme divine weapon, soul-calming divine bead. The so-called soul-calming divine bead was to protect the divine soul. In other words, this was a supreme divine weapon that specialized in protecting the divine soul. Whether it was humans, dragons, or other creatures, the divine soul was undoubtedly the most important, and also the most fragile. Once the divine soul was gone, even if there was a heaven-defying divine pill, there was no way to save it. From this, one could imagine how precious a sovereign-grade divine artifact that could protect the soul was. It could be said that the value of the soul-calming divine bead surpassed all supreme divine weapons of the same level. The woman in white seemed to have thought of something and muttered to herself, her face full of disbelief. How heaven-defying was this kid's tone, that he could even get such a divine weapon? Lord Ancestral Dragon. Noticing the woman in white's reaction, the 10th elder looked at her in surprise. Could it be that the bead was really a supreme divine weapon? But even a supreme divine weapon could not make the Ancestral Dragon lose his composure like this. Because the Ancestral Dragon even had a heaven-defying divine weapon. That is the soul-calming divine bead. The woman in white looked at the 10th elder and sighed. Soul-calming divine bead? Everyone was suspicious. The soul-calming divine bead is a supreme divine weapon. Its only function is to protect the divine soul. Although it has only this function, although it does not have a powerful killing power, it is still incomparable to other supreme divine weapons. The woman in white explained. What? A supreme divine weapon that protects the divine soul. Everyone's mind buzzed when they heard this. Everyone present was at least a war god, so they all knew the importance of the divine soul. Protecting the divine soul. This was a divine weapon that many people dreamed of. How heaven-defying was this Libuer's luck? The first time he entered the divine technique treasury, he obtained the supreme divine technique Qilin skill. The first time he entered the divine weapon pavilion, he obtained the supreme divine weapon soul calming divine bead. Did he step on dog shit when he went out? Impossible, absolutely impossible. After the 10th elder heard this, he also shook his head, his face full of disbelief. No matter how lucky he was, it was impossible to obtain a supreme divine technique and a supreme divine weapon consecutively. It was also at this moment. Qin Feiyang raised his head to look at the 10th elder and said with a smile, "Are you surprised? Are you surprised?" The 10th elder clenched his fists and roared, "Lord Ancestral Dragon, there must be a problem." Other than this explanation, he could not find any other reason. Yes, Lord, he must have some way to see what's inside the iron box. Lord, you must investigate thoroughly. He's cheating. Everyone roared. Envy, jealousy, hatred. This was human nature. If you can't get it, you don't want others to get it. Cheating? Are you doubting the ability of the dragons? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Someone said angrily, "Cheating is cheating. What does it have to do with the ability of the dragons?" The Divine Weapon Pavilion and the Divine Technique Treasury were both created by the dragons. Now that you say that I'm cheating, isn't that doubting the ability of the dragons? Qin Feiyang laughed. That's not what we mean. Don't talk nonsense. Someone immediately roared in anger out of humiliation. Then what do you mean? Just because you're jealous of me, you're saying that I'm cheating. Jealousy is something that only incompetent people have. Have you all admitted your incompetence? Qin Feiyang pursed his lips into a mocking smile. You. Everyone glared at Qin Feiyang, gnashing their teeth in hatred. The key point was that there was nothing they could do. Chapter 2493. Jealousy will only make people fall behind. Only by being humble can one improve. All of you must remember this. Qin Feiyang looked at those people and smiled like an old man. Then with a thought, the soul fixation divine pearl immediately disappeared. Everyone gritted their teeth and stared at Qin Feiyang. He actually dared to preach to them. In his knowledge sea, as soon as the soul anchoring pearl appeared, it floated beside Qin Feiyang's soul, emitting rays of divine light, protecting his soul. At this moment, Qin Feiyang felt safer than ever. In the future, other than a heaven-defying divine artifact, what else could pose a threat to his soul? Moreover, this soul-anchoring pearl had a chance to evolve into a heaven-defying divine artifact. What he lacked now was the power of law. At that time, once the power of law was bestowed, when the soul-anchoring pearl evolved into a heaven-defying divine artifact, even if his opponent also had a heaven-defying divine artifact, they wouldn't be able to harm his soul. I've profited. Qin Feiyang smiled. The Shadowless was really a reliable guy. But who was he exactly? Gathering his thoughts, Qin Feiyang looked at the Divine Weapon Pavilion, then at the Divine Technique Treasury. In the end, he decided to enter the treasury. He had already obtained a lot of divine artifacts from the treasury, but there weren't many powerful divine techniques in the Black Tortoise world. It was time to seek blessings for the Black Tortoise world. He went to the treasury again. I really want to follow him and see how he found these divine techniques and divine artifacts. I don't believe that there is someone in this world with such good luck. The people around were ready to make a move, but no one dared to enter the treasury, because in their eyes, Qin Feiyang was an existence that they couldn't afford to offend. I'll go take a look. The white-robed woman spoke. In a flash, she appeared in front of the treasury. She didn't use any token or merit points and directly walked in. Qin Feiyang was wandering around. When he saw the white-clothed woman enter, he was speechless. You really suspect that I'm cheating? The woman in white didn't say a word. She just stared at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly and continued to wander around. After a short while he casually grabbed a jade box and disappeared. So casual? The white-clothed woman was stunned. She grabbed another jade box and left the treasury. Outside, the two of them appeared one after another. The white-clothed woman glanced at the jade box in her hand, and then looked at the jade box in Qin Feiyang's hand. There seemed to be a trace of expectation, and also a trace of nervousness in her eyes. Qin Feiyang smiled at the white-clothed woman and opened the jade box. A flame immediately rushed out. This aura! Everyone's heart trembled. Qin Feiyang grabbed the jade slip inside and checked it for a bit. He smiled and said, "My luck is really too heaven-defying. Legendary level divine art, White Tiger True Technique." What? Another legendary deity technique? Everyone's eyes trembled. What kind of heaven-defying luck was this? The white-clothed woman was also extremely shocked. She opened the jade box that she collected and saw that there was only one inferior deity technique, a legendary level divine artifact, and an inferior deity technique. This was a huge difference. If she didn't see it with her own eyes that Qin Feiyang just casually took a jade box, she would really suspect that Qin Feiyang cheated. Qin Feiyang chuckled, put away the jade box, and turned to enter the treasury. The white-clothed woman immediately followed him in, and the 10th elder also ran in. This time, Qin Feiyang still just casually took a jade box. The white-clothed woman and the 10th elder didn't believe it, and also took a jade box. The result came out. Inside Qin Feiyang's jade box, there was another legendary level deity technique, and the jade boxes that the white-clothed woman and the 10th elder took out were respectively an inferior deity technique and a middle deity technique. What the hell? Could it be that he is the chosen one? His luck is so heaven-defying. People couldn't believe it. How could there be such a freak? Every time he went in, he would get the best deity technique. He went in again. Under everyone's gazes, Qin Feiyang once again entered the deity technique treasury. The white-clothed woman and the 10th elder were like two little followers, following Qin Feiyang all the time. When Qin Feiyang went up to the second floor and was about to grab a jade box, the 10th elder took a step forward and grabbed the jade box. "You still want to grab this?" Qin Feiyang was speechless. Then, under the white-clothed woman's gaze, he grabbed another jade box. And when he went out, the jade box that the 10th elder grabbed was only a middle deity technique. What Qin Feiyang took out was another legendary grade deity technique. What's going on? The 10th elder looked at the jade slip in his hand in astonishment. This was obviously what Qin Feiyang wanted. Why was it only a middle deity technique? This is luck. Qin Feiyang smiled proudly and entered the treasury again. Finally, everyone couldn't help it. After the white-clothed woman and the 10th elder followed in, they also took out their identity tokens and swarmed in. Although it was a bit of a waste of merits, they really wanted to know how Qin Feiyang chose the jade box. But they were disappointed. Qin Feiyang still took a jade box casually and didn't choose anything. However, he got a legendary level deity technique again. And this time, there were hundreds of people who entered. Before they came out, they also grabbed a jade box casually like Qin Feiyang. But among the hundreds of people, the best deity technique was a perfect deity technique. Isn't this too outrageous? There are so many of us, but we don't even have a peak deity technique. And he is alone. As long as he goes in, he will definitely get a legendary level deity technique. Is he cheating? Everyone was incredulous. Of course, Qin Feiyang wouldn't say that a mysterious expert was helping him. And every time he did it casually, it was done on purpose. Time passed little by little. Qin Feiyang had already entered the treasury 9 times. And all 9 times it was a legendary level deity technique. Everyone was numb. It was too abnormal. If it was really due to luck, then this person was definitely the chosen one. After entering the treasury 9 times, Qin Feiyang went to the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Because according to the Shadowless Man, there were no more legendary level deity techniques in the treasury. The highest level was the peak deity technique. Yes, the sovereign level deity technique and legendary level deity technique in the treasury were all out of stock. And the peak deity technique naturally didn't have much of a temptation for the current Qin Feiyang. It was better to get a few more legendary level deity techniques. In addition to the Qilin technique and the Serious Demonic Book, Qin Feiyang got a sovereign level deity technique and 10 legendary-level deity techniques in the treasury. The only regret was that after taking away the Qilin technique, the Dragon God Palace still hadn't put the sovereign-level deity technique in. If he put it in, he could get another sovereign-level deity technique. After entering the Divine Weapon Pavilion once, and the treasury 9 times, Qin Feiyang still had 6,000 merit points left. He could still enter the Divine Weapon Pavilion 6 times. And these 6 times, he got another 6 legendary-level deity techniques. The white-clothed woman kept following him, watching as the legendary-level deity techniques fell into Qin Feiyang's pockets one after another. Her heart was bleeding. Cheating? He didn't catch it. Luck. Even if the heavens were watching over him, it was impossible to have such luck. Could he see through the jade box? Metal box? That was even more impossible, because as the ancestral dragon, she couldn't see through the contents of the jade and metal boxes. She couldn't figure it out. How did Qin Feiyang do it? There must be more legendary-level deity techniques in the Divine Weapon Pavilion. 10th Elder, come, let me exchange some more merit points. Qin Feiyang looked at the 10th Elder and smiled. The 10th Elder's face turned green. You want to go in? Lord. The 10th Elder looked helplessly at the white-clothed woman. Cough, cough. The white-clothed woman coughed dryly, looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Stop while you're ahead. Lord Ancestral Dragon, what do you mean by that? Aren't the Divine Weapon Pavilion and the Deity Technique Treasury open to us disciples? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. The white-clothed woman's expression was rather awkward as she said, Although you're right, you've already obtained so much. That's because I was lucky that I was able to obtain these deity techniques and deity techniques. It can't be that you guys are so stingy that you won't let me in after seeing that I've obtained the deity techniques and deity techniques, right? Let me go in a few more times while I'm still lucky. Qin Feiyang laughed. The white-clothed woman didn't know what to do for a moment. This was because the existence of the Divine Weapon Pavilion and the Deity Technique Treasury was indeed for the disciples below. However, if this continued, who knew how many more deity techniques and deity techniques he would lose? To the Dragon God Palace, this was a huge loss. Li Buer, you should be content. There's already so much. Some disciples were dissatisfied. What does it have to do with you? No way. Qin Feiyang said. If you take away all the good deity techniques in one go, what will we do in the future? Someone said angrily. Won't the Dragon God Palace make up for it? What are you afraid of? Besides, isn't there still the 2nd island, the 3rd island, the 4th island? These places also have the Divine Weapon Pavilion and the Deity Technique Treasury. Qin Feiyang laughed. The white-clothed woman's heart trembled. This person couldn't be thinking about the Divine Weapon Pavilion and the Deity Technique Treasury on the other islands, right? Qin Feiyang looked at the white-clothed woman and laughed. Master, let's exchange for some more merit points. I have the medicinal ingredients. The white-clothed woman shook her head. That's boring. Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly and said, Fine. I'll come again when you guys make up for the supreme deity techniques and deity tools. Then I won't disturb you guys any longer. Goodbye. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and turned to leave. What the hell? He'll come again when we get the supreme deity techniques and deity tools. Is he trying to squeeze the Dragon God Palace dry? Everyone was speechless. Master, you're letting him go just like that? There's something fishy about this matter. The 10th Elder looked at Qin Feiyang's back and said to the white-clothed woman. Everyone knows there's something fishy, but do you have any evidence? You've been following him. Did you see him cheat? The white-clothed woman rubbed her forehead. So many deity techniques and deity tools were all gone. The Dragon God Palace had never suffered such a loss in all its years of existence. The 10th Elder was unwilling to accept this. Not only was he humiliated in public, but he also took away so many deity techniques and deity tools. Give an order immediately. The white-clothed woman gritted her teeth and looked at the 10th Elder. Chapter 2494. What order? The 10th Elder was suspicious. The other disciples also looked at the woman in white in confusion. Only the young man was indifferent and snoring. This made everyone speechless. How could he still fall asleep at this time? The woman in white said. Order all the island masters to immediately withdraw the supreme level and legendary level divine weapons and divine arts. What? Withdraw the supreme level and legendary level divine weapons and divine arts? If that's the case, wouldn't the highest grade of divine weapon pavilion and divine art treasury be the pinnacle grade divine art and divine art? Everyone was stunned. For Li Bu-er, they actually changed the rules of the divine weapon pavilion and divine arts treasury? The woman in white looked at the disciples and sighed. This can't be helped. Please understand. Everyone was silent. Indeed, if they didn't withdraw the supreme level and legendary level divine arts and divine weapons now, they would probably fall into Li Bu-er's hands. This guy was really ruthless. He even forced the ancestral dragon to this point. The 10th elder looked at the woman in white and asked, "What about the first island?" "Maintain the status quo," the woman in white said. Her meaning was obvious. No more supreme level and legendary level divine arts and divine weapons. "Master, this is not a long-term solution." "Yeah, we still want to try our luck," the disciples around said. "When Chief Palace Master Yi Zhong returns, I will look for him to discuss a solution. After all, most of the rules of the Dragon God Palace were set by him," the woman in white said. "All right." The disciples nodded. Headache. The woman in white rubbed her forehead, looked at the young man and turned to leave. The snow python looked at the woman in white and returned to the disciplinary hall with the sleeping young man. The disciples also left in 2s and 3s. "Little bastard, I will not let you go." The 10th elder looked at the direction of Qin Feiyang's cave residence with a trace of killing intent in his eyes. He then turned and entered the deacon hall. "I really didn't expect it to end like this." Lin Hua also shook his head and sighed. The name Li Bu-er would become a legend. "Lin Hua, come in." At this time, 10th elder's voice rang out in the deacon hall. Lin Hua came back to his senses and hurriedly turned around and ran into the duty hall. The 10th elder sat beside the tea table and said sternly, "I have a mission for you." Back to Qin Feiyang. After returning to the cavern, he entered the ancient castle and handed over the divine arts and divine artifacts to the Fire Lotus. "So many?" Fire Lotus was surprised. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said regretfully, "If I had known, I would have exchanged more contribution points." "Are you really going to rob them all?" Fire Lotus was stunned. Qin Feiyang was stunned and said unhappily, "Girl, why have you also learned bad things?" "How am I bad?" Fire Lotus looked at him in confusion. Qin Feiyang said, "I used my merit points to enter openly. How can this be called robbery?" Fire Lotus could not help but laugh. "But what was the difference between this and robbery?" "Qin Dage, I am also curious. Why do you always get such good divine artifacts and divine arts every time you go in?" Fire Lotus asked. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Didn't I say that I have a benefactor helping me?" Fire Lotus said, "But you didn't say who the benefactor is?" I can't say. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. Fire Lotus was helpless and kept him in suspense. Qin Feiyang said, "Leave a legendary divine artifact for the big black wolf. As for the rest, you can do as you see fit." He already had enough divine arts and did not need any more. As for divine artifacts, the Azure Phoenix sword and coiling dragon staff were enough. "Okay." Fire Lotus nodded. Qin Feiyang scanned the hall and asked, "Where are Feng Daji and Hua Yi?" Feng Daji is in seclusion to reconstruct his body. Hua Yi is outside watching the golden sea python. Fire Lotus said, "The sea python hasn't fused yet?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. Although only 2 hours had passed outside, many years had passed in the castle. "It should be soon," Fire Lotus said. Qin Feiyang turned and walked out of the castle. He saw Hua Yi sitting in the courtyard, drinking wine while looking at the golden sea python not far away. "Your wine." Qin Feiyang smelled the fragrance of wine from afar. When he got closer, he found that it was the heavenly immortal wine. Hua Yi laughed and said, "It's not easy to return to the northern region. Naturally, I have to go to the Eastern Tomb's Heaven Immortal Tower." For Hua Yi, wine was indispensable. So when he returned to the northern region, he specially went to the Heaven Immortal Tower. Qin Feiyang said, "So you met the young miss of the Heaven Immortal Tower?" "Of course. A few hundred jars of heavenly immortal wine. As long as she asks, the heaven immortal tower will dare to sell it to me. Hui said. A few hundred jars. Qin Feiyang's body stiffened. A total of 500 jars. But it's still not enough. Hui shook his head. You might as well go and brew wine yourself. Qin Feiyang was speechless. 500 jars of heavenly immortal wine wasn't enough? Did this guy really think that he was an alcoholic? Don't talk about it. I really went to the young miss of the Heaven Immortal Tower to ask for the heavenly immortal wine's brewing formula. In the end, she directly chased me out. Hui had an unhappy look on his face. You are really shameless. Qin Feiyang was speechless to the extreme. Why was the Heaven Immortal Tower so famous? It was because of the heavenly immortal wine. He actually went to ask for the heavenly immortal wine's brewing formula. Wasn't this the same as snatching the lifeblood of others? Being chased out was already considered light. If the young miss of the Heaven Immortal Tower was strong enough, she would most probably kill him with a single slap. Hui even had an unhappy look on his face. He really admired how shameless this guy was. Shameless? Good things should be shared with everyone. Hui pouted. After speaking, a mocking look flashed in his eyes. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Do you know? This young miss of the Heaven Immortal Tower even specially inquired about your situation. Inquired about my situation? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. She seems to be very concerned about you. Hui had a playful look on his face. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said, What are you trying to say? Don't you know what I want to say? I really don't understand. You are such a dull person. How can you be so popular with women? Hui touched his chin and scrutinized Qin Feiyang. Cough cough. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and shook his head. Don't play matchmaker. Shangguan Qiu and I were messed up by you guys. Otherwise, how could things have turned out like this? Some things, if they didn't say it out loud, even they wouldn't realize it. For example, Shangguan Qiu. If it wasn't for the people beside him talking nonsense all day long, Shangguan Qiu probably wouldn't even think in this direction. Gossip was a fearful thing. This saying was indeed true. You don't know how lucky you are. Little Yuer doesn't object to you having multiple wives. Why are you still so pretentious? Hui looked at him with disdain. I'm different from you. I have to be loyal to my feelings. Qin Feiyang said. Hui was slightly stunned and puzzled. Why do you give yourself such restrictions? Because of my family background. My father has many concubines. But other than fighting and scheming against each other all day long, what's the use of them? It's tiring just to look at them. And my mother, although she was the empress and looked glorious on the surface, I don't know how much she suffered behind the scenes. So I don't want my women to be burdened like my mother. Qin Feiyang said. I see. Hui nodded in realization. Boom. At this moment, a terrifying aura erupted. Qin Feiyang and Hui immediately looked over and saw that the aura came from the golden sea python. At this moment, the golden sea python slowly rose into the air, its whole body shining with golden light. But its eyes were still closed, as if it was in a deep sleep. However, its aura was rapidly transforming. In its aura, there was a trace of dragon's might. And this dragon's might was getting stronger and stronger. And its body was also changing rapidly. The snake scales all over its body were transforming into dragon scales. The dragon horns on its head were purer, as if cast in gold. There were also 5 bulges under its abdomen, getting bigger and bigger, as if something was about to emerge from its flesh and blood. All of a sudden, the golden sea python roared towards the sky, and it actually let out a loud dragon roar. Its face also became distorted, as if it was in pain. Crack. About 10 breaths passed. The snake scales under its abdomen suddenly shattered, its flesh and blood were torn, and 2 claws emerged. These were dragon claws. As soon as the dragon claws appeared, the snake scales on its body also turned into dragon scales one after another. Its body shape was also changing rapidly. Boom. Crack. However, at this moment, blood clouds suddenly surged in the sky. Streaks of blood-colored lightning flashed crazily in the clouds. This is heavenly tribulation. Qin Feiyang and Hui were stunned. The carp leaping over the dragon gate actually had to go through a baptism of tribulation? Qin Feiyang, can the Black Tortoise realm withstand it? Hui came back to his senses and hurriedly asked. This? Qin Feiyang scanned the Black Tortoise realm, and he really didn't know if it could withstand the Golden Sea Python's heavenly tribulation. It definitely couldn't before it merged with the ancient castle, because the Black Tortoise realm was too fragile. And now, the Black Tortoise realm had merged with the ancient castle, and the Black Tortoise realm had become as tough as the ancient castle. But one had to know that the Golden Sea Python was a half-step indestructible. He had never experienced a half-step indestructible heavenly tribulation, so he didn't know if the Black Tortoise realm could withstand it. Back then, the Fire Lotus had undergone a tribulation, but at that time, the Fire Lotus's cultivation had not recovered to its peak state. So, the Fire Lotus's heavenly tribulation was far inferior to the Golden Sea Python's heavenly tribulation. Hui said in a deep voice, "If you can't hold on, then hurry up and get out." Qin Feiyang frowned and scanned the sky with blood clouds. A smile gradually appeared on his face, and he said, "I think it should be able to hold on." "What do you mean?" Hui was suspicious. Why did he suddenly become so confident? "If I can't hold on, that little brat will definitely run out first," Qin Feiyang said. "That's good." Hui nodded. "But I definitely can't undergo the tribulation here." Qin Feiyang scanned the medicinal field. If he were to undergo the tribulation here, then this medicinal field, crystal vein, and spirit vein would definitely be destroyed. However, just as Qin Feiyang was about to leave the Devil's Land with the Golden Sea Python, a black divine light suddenly rushed out of the ancient castle next to them. Looking at this sudden change, Qin Feiyang and Hui's eyes were filled with a trace of surprise. Crack! A blood-red bolt of lightning struck down. The Golden Sea Python also opened its eyes. Looking at the lightning power, its eyes were filled with fear. Shrouded in the aura of the heavenly tribulation, it could feel the power of the heavenly tribulation more clearly than Qin Feiyang and Hui. It had no confidence in surviving this tribulation. Chapter 2495. Crack! The heavenly tribulation carried the power to destroy the world as it struck. The Golden Sea Serpent was about to go all out. But at this moment, the divine light that rushed out of the castle quickly spread out above the Golden Sea Serpent's head like a black carpet. The next moment, the heavenly tribulation struck the deep divine light. The sea serpent couldn't believe what happened. The heavenly tribulation seemed to have hit a sponge without any ripples. The heavenly tribulation didn't disappear either. It was imprisoned by the black divine light. That's amazing. Hui was dumbfounded. He nearly cursed out loud. The Golden Sea Serpent was so shocked that it couldn't close its mouth. A half-step imperishable heavenly tribulation had been blocked so easily? Was this the castle's ability? Too terrifying. What a shocking sight. Crack! The second heavenly tribulation struck. The result was the same. Just like that, the heavenly tribulation struck the black divine light one after another. So many heavenly tribulations? Qin Feiyang was surprised. 25 heavenly tribulations had struck, but it wasn't over yet. Was it the same as the inner demons and fire lotuses, heavenly tribulation, which had 99 heavenly tribulations? Rumble! Crack! Blood clouds rolled and thunder and lightning roared. In the end, 99 heavenly tribulations struck. The power of the 99th heavenly tribulation was the sum of the previous 98 heavenly tribulation. The light curtain formed by the divine light couldn't block it, but the castle seemed to be prepared. Another vast divine light appeared and imprisoned the heavenly tribulation. And so, the 99 heavenly tribulations were all imprisoned in the void. Although the divine light imprisoned them, they could still feel a destructive aura. Each of the first 98 heavenly tribulations was enough to seriously injure a half-step undying realm expert. The last heavenly tribulation could even seriously injure a beginner undying realm expert like me. Hui swallowed his saliva and said, "The divine might of this ancient castle was truly all-encompassing." So powerful? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Of course, if it wasn't for the castle, the Golden Sea Serpent wouldn't have succeeded. Hui said. Qin Feiyang's mind suddenly became active. If that was the case, Wouldn't these 99 heavenly tribulations be equivalent to 99 trump cards? Then in the future, when facing the half-step undying dragons, he would only need to use the power of heavenly tribulation to defeat them? Rumble. All of a sudden, a beam of golden divine light tore through the blood clouds in the sky and descended. The divine light of the ancient castle immediately retreated to the side with the power of the 99 heavenly tribulations. After the golden divine light landed, it entered the sea python's body. Ding! The sea serpent let out a loud dragon roar, and the last step of its transformation was completed. A 5-clawed golden dragon appeared out of nowhere. The dragon's scales all over his body seemed to be made of gold, as they emitted a dazzling radiance. However, the symbol of the ancestral dragon did not appear on its forehead. This meant that the ancestral golden dragon was indeed still alive. This was because there could only be one ancestral dragon in the world. If the former didn't die, the future generations would never be able to give birth to a second ancestral dragon. The sea python was extremely excited. Its enormous body was trembling. That was not right. It should be called the 5-clawed golden dragon now. Boom! But in the next moment, the aura in its body surged out uncontrollably. The 5-clawed golden dragon was stunned. Qin Feiyang and Hui were also stunned. This seemed to be a breakthrough. Sure enough, the 5-clawed golden dragon's aura soared all the way. In just a few breaths, its aura broke through the shackles of the half-step undying realm and stepped into the initial undying realm. Hui was stunned. It actually broke through to the initial undying realm? This sea serpent had really obtained a great fortune. The 5-clawed golden dragon was also stunned for a long time. It had never expected that fusing with the divine body of the ancestral dragon would bring it such great benefits. Not only did it transform into a 5-clawed golden dragon, but it also broke through a realm. In the undying realm, the gap between each small realm was comparable to the previous big realm. The difference between the half-step undying realm and the initial undying realm was like heaven and earth. The initial undying realm could even kill the half-step undying realm. Moreover, after reaching the half-step undying realm, it was harder to break through a small realm than to reach the sky. A large number of creatures would be trapped in the half-step undying realm for the rest of their lives, until they died of old age. It could be said that, in the imperishable realm, there was an insurmountable chasm between every small realm. Not bad, not bad. Qin Feiyang was also very gratified. First, Hui stepped into the initial undying realm, and now the 5-clawed golden dragon broke through to the initial undying realm. The strength of the black tortoise realm had increased by a large margin. One day, when the Sunset Divine Bow truly received the allegiance of the 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts, its strength would become even stronger. I can already see hope. The dragons are not so far away. Qin Feiyang murmured. Thank you. The 5-clawed golden dragon withdrew its aura and flew in front of Qin Feiyang, its huge eyes full of gratitude. If it hadn't been for the help of the ancient castle, even with such an opportunity, it would not have been able to transform successfully. Because it had no confidence in surviving the 99 heavenly tribulations. Qin Feiyang said, Don't thank me. It was the ancient castle that helped you, not me. It's all the same. You helped me, and I will do my best to help you. No matter what happens in the future, I will stand with you. The 5-clawed golden dragon promised. At least you have some conscience. Hui smiled. What does this have to do with you? The 5-clawed golden dragon glanced at Hui with an extremely arrogant expression. What? Hui was stunned. The one who helped this emperor to transcend the tribulation was Qin Feiyang, and the one who controlled this emperor was also Qin Feiyang. What right do you have to speak? The 5-clawed golden dragon disdained. Hui raised his eyebrows and said, Are you turning your back on me? That's strange. Is this emperor familiar with you? The 5-clawed golden dragon looked at him suspiciously. You're really ruthless. You're more white-eyed wolf than the white-eyed wolf. If it weren't for me, would you have survived? If it weren't for me speaking up for you, would you have gotten the divine body of the golden dragon ancestral dragon? Hui said angrily. That's also because of you. You made this emperor be controlled by Qin Feiyang. As for the divine body of the golden dragon ancestral dragon, this emperor shamelessly asked Qin Feiyang for it. It has nothing to do with you. So, even if this emperor works for you, it will be for Qin Feiyang. It has nothing to do with you. The five-clawed golden dragon snorted coldly. Say that again? Hui raised his eyebrows and said angrily, What? You want to fight? Come, come, come. Don't use the heaven-defying divine artifact. See how this emperor will beat you. The five-clawed golden dragon clamored. They were both at the initial level of the immortal realm. As long as they didn't use the heaven-defying divine artifact, who was afraid of who? Hui was furious. After transforming into a five-clawed golden dragon and breaking through to the initial level of the immortal realm, he turned hostile on the spot. Couldn't there be more trust between a human and a dragon? I'm not going to talk nonsense with you. You want this emperor to be your mount? No way. The five-clawed golden dragon snorted coldly, turned into a stream of light, and merged into Qin Feiyang's wrist. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked down and saw the golden dragon coiled around his wrist. It looked like an exquisite golden bracelet. You have no conscience. Hui lamented. If he had known earlier, he would have killed him with a slap in the internal sea. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh. He didn't expect that in the end. It was him who got a big bargain. Laugh your ass. Hui glared at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang said loudly, Fire Lotus, someone is scolding you. Fire Lotus walked over and raised her eyebrows. Who's scolding me? Him. Qin Feiyang pointed at Hui. Hui's expression changed, and he hurriedly said, Don't talk nonsense. When did I scold her? You're joking. Then my sister is Fire Lotus. If you're not scolding her, then who are you scolding? Qin Feiyang laughed. Bastard shameless. No wonder even the five-clawed golden dragon would follow you. You're the same kind of trash. Hui gritted his teeth and stared at Qin Feiyang. But when he saw Fire Lotus's unkind eyes, he immediately soared into the sky and fled. That's not right. Why am I running? My current cultivation is stronger than Fire Lotus. I can suppress her with a wave of my hand. Forget it. A good man doesn't fight with a woman. Women were indeed creatures without conscience. How long had she followed Qin Feiyang, this bastard? She actually sided with him. This guy. Fire Lotus shook her head and smiled. Looking at the five-clawed golden dragon on Qin Feiyang's wrist, she said in surprise, It's actually five-clawed. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Generally, golden dragons have 4 claws. Five-clawed golden dragons are very rare. I guess only the patriarch of the Golden Dragon clan and the ancestral dragon are five-clawed golden dragons. Fire Lotus said with a smile. Qin Feiyang nodded his head, looked at the five-clawed golden dragon on his wrist, and said, I'm a little worried about a problem. What problem? Fire Lotus looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, It has fused with the divine body of the ancestral dragon, so it must more or less carry the aura of the ancestral dragon. When it faces the dragons, will it be discovered by the dragons? It won't. The five-clawed golden dragon's voice sounded. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang lowered his head and looked at the five-clawed golden dragon. After the baptism of the heavenly tribulation, the aura of the ancestral dragon has been completely erased. Now, even if this emperor and the ancestral dragon collide face to face, it won't know that this emperor has fused with its divine body. The five-clawed golden dragon said. Really? Qin Feiyang asked. The five-clawed golden dragon replied. That's good. Qin Feiyang smiled. In this way, he could bring the five-clawed golden dragon out without any scruples. And with the protection of this five-clawed golden dragon, even if he faced the beginner immortal dragons, he would have the confidence. Naturally, not to mention those half-step immortal dragons. Why did the ancient castle leave the power of the heavenly tribulation? At this time, Fire Lotus looked up at the 99 power of the heavenly tribulation in the sky with a trace of suspicion in her eyes. Qin Feiyang looked up and couldn't help but ponder. Could it be? Qin Feiyang's eyes suddenly flashed with a trace of surprise. What is it? Fire Lotus asked. I think the ancient castle should want to leave the power of the heavenly tribulation like last time, waiting for an excellent opportunity to forcibly break the seal of the small beast. Qin Feiyang said, "Small beast? How strong is its cultivation? It can even seal the ancient castle that has fused with the Black Tortoise realm and almost surpassed a divine artifact." Fire Lotus whispered. Every time she thought of the small beast, she couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. "I don't know how strong it is, but I'm sure that its cultivation has definitely surpassed the immortal realm," Qin Feiyang said. Every time he thought of the golden small beast, a sense of powerlessness rose in his heart. The five-clawed golden dragon was also extremely surprised when he heard the conversation between the two. The small beast that sealed the ancient castle? Beyond the immortal realm? There was such an existence in the world. Wasn't the strongest under the starry sky the dragon sovereign? It was beyond imagination. Chapter 2496. Buzz. Suddenly, the image crystal rang. Qin Feiyang took out the image crystal, and three shadows quickly appeared. The three of them were Jiang Dafei, Li Changhe and Wang Daoyuan. "Greetings, young lord." "Greetings, young master." The three of them bowed. "You must have been busy during this period of time." Qin Feiyang looked at the three of them with a smile. Li Changhe said respectfully, "This is what we should do." Qin Feiyang asked, "Then why are you sending me a message now? Is there a problem?" "You've already given us the list. How could there be any problem? We sent you a message to ask you to come over and take a look." Wang Daoyuan smiled. "Look at what?" Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Wang Daoyuan said, "Didn't you say that you want to control everyone? The people on the list have been gathered by us and are waiting for you." "Where?" Qin Feiyang asked. Wang Daoyuan said, "Outside the Holy Dragon City Black Tortoise Mountain." After saying that, the three of them gave Qin Feiyang a few coordinates. "Okay, I'll be right there." Qin Feiyang turned off the image crystal and called Madman out of the cultivation room. Madman's cultivation had already broken through to the lesser stage of the Supreme God realm. It seemed that he had been cultivating in seclusion, seriously all these years in the northern region. And a monster like Madman must have entered the Purple Gold Divine Pagoda. The Purple Gold Divine Pagoda also had a time array. The two of them left the ancient castle and appeared in the cave abode, preparing to open the altar. "Brotherly." A warm laughter sounded, and a figure streaked across the sky like lightning and landed in front of the cave abode. It was Hong Yi. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. Why did Hong Yi take the initiative to look for him? Hong Yi walked into the cave abode, looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Are you guys preparing to go out?" "There's something I need to deal with." Qin Feiyang nodded. Hong Yi smiled and said, "Then why didn't you call me along?" Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, "These are all trivial matters. There's no need to trouble you." "It's no trouble at all. I'm happy to help." Hong Yi chuckled. Qin Feiyang said, "There's really no need." Now that Madman was here, there was no need to ask Hong Yi for help. This person was very greedy. If this continued, who knew how many benefits he would get from him? Although Qin Feiyang didn't care about these so-called benefits, there was no need to benefit an irrelevant person. "Why has Brotherly become so distant after not seeing you for a while? Who are you talking to?" "Your business is my business," Hong Yi said. Qin Feiyang frowned and nodded with a smile. "All right then. That's right. You don't have to be polite with me. Even if it's just a small matter, I'm happy to help." Hong Yi smiled. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Then let's go. It's still the same old rules." "Same old rules," Hong Yi murmured and didn't immediately send the two of them to the spatial divine item. His eyes flashed with an inexplicable light. "What's wrong?" Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. "Brotherly, there's a question I can't figure out. Why do you hide in the spatial divine item every time you enter the Dragon God Palace?" Hong Yi looked at Qin Feiyang curiously. Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat and said with a smile, "I don't want to be seen by others, so as to avoid some trouble." "Is that really the case? Why do I feel that there's something else?" Hong Yi smiled. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other and frowned. "What are you trying to say?" "Nothing. Purely curious." "Brotherly, I heard that last time you got a lot of divine weapons and divine arts from the Divine Weapon Pavilion and the Divine Art Treasury." Hong Yi continued to ask, and didn't have the slightest intention of taking the two of them out of the Dragon God Palace. This is something that everyone knows. There's no need to ask when you already know the answer. Qin Feiyang smiled. You're really lucky. Brotherly, you can't use all these divine arts and divine weapons by yourself. Why don't you share some with me? Hong Yi smiled. Greedy indeed. Qin Feiyang muttered and smiled faintly. Sorry you're late. I gave them all to the people around me. Hong Yi said. You didn't give away the Qilin technique and soul-anchoring divine pearl, right? He didn't believe that this person would be willing to give away supreme divine arts and supreme divine artifacts to the people around him. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, I didn't give them away. Why? Hong Yi said. Then why don't you give them to me? Give them to you. Qin Feiyang was stunned and said in astonishment. After all this time, you came to me just to ask for the Qilin technique and soul-anchoring divine pearl. You can't say it so harshly. Look, I've also helped you a lot. Let's talk about this madman. He only managed to enter the Dragon God Temple with my help. Shouldn't you repay me? Hong Yi said with a smile. Qin Feiyang also smiled. Madman's smile was even more brilliant. He actually dared to have ideas about them. This courage was really quite admirable. Hong Yi was also fearless and said with a smile. Brotherly, listen to me. Harmony brings wealth. This is the right way. Qin Feiyang said. I'm very curious. What is your confidence? Since he had already said it out loud, there was naturally no need to be polite. Confidence? You should know in your heart. Hong Yi said. I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Do I have to point it out? Fine. I'll fulfill your wish. During this period, I've been thinking, why do I have to hide in a spatial artifact every time I enter the Dragon God Palace? Then one day, I suddenly thought of a possibility. It's also the only possibility. You can't freely pass through the entrance. And being unable to pass through the entrance is also a kind of explanation. You're not controlled by the stone of fate. Am I right? Hong Yi smiled. It seems that I've underestimated you, Qin Feiyang said. Is that really the case? Hong Yi was shocked and said in a deep voice. Everyone who enters the Dragon God Palace will be controlled by the stone of fate. Why aren't you? Aren't you very smart? Think about it yourself, Qin Feiyang said. Could it be that young man who snatched the stone of fate from the Dragon God Palace master, and then helped you remove the fate contract? Hong Yi was surprised. You can even guess this. You're indeed smart. I really shouldn't have underestimated you. Qin Feiyang smiled in surprise. I see. Hong Yi nodded and laughed. It's not that you underestimated me, but you overestimated yourself. Yes. So you're going to use this to threaten me and make me give you the Qilin technique and soul calming pearl. Qin Feiyang said. Then do you think this can threaten you? Hong Yi smiled and asked. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. No. Hong Yi looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. You've made a very stupid decision, you know? If you can be honest, then I definitely won't make a move on you. But you chose to threaten me. You even want the Paragon technique and artifact. Are you worthy? Qin Feiyang said. Haha. Hong Yi raised his head and laughed. He became more and more fearless and said, I've long known that you killed Wang Darren and the other two. And I also know that you have supreme experts protecting you. Do you think I'll come to you unprepared? Qin Feiyang was stunned and asked suspiciously, What preparation? Before coming, I've already told a friend of mine that if I don't go back alive today, I'll go and find Lord Ancestral Dragon. At that time, you should know what the consequences will be, right? Hong Yi said with a smile. Sure. Qin Feiyang nodded. This person was quite smart to be able to plan this step in advance. Give it to me. I promise that we'll live in peace in the future. But there's one more condition. You have to give me some divine pills on time every month. Hong Yi said. You want the Qilin technique and soul calming pearl? And divine pills? Aren't you afraid that you can't handle it? Qin Feiyang said. Hong Yi said with a smile. Don't worry. I have a big appetite. No matter how much I want, I can handle it. Is that so? Qin Feiyang looked outside the cave, his eyes flashing slightly, and said helplessly. All right, I'll give it to you. Follow me to the space divine object. There's no need for that. Just give it to me here. Hong Yi said. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and said. I invited you so kindly, but you actually refused. You're not giving me face. Then tell me, why should I give you face? Hong Yi looked at him mockingly. If you don't give me face, then I definitely won't give you face either. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, lowered his head to look at the five-clawed golden dragon on his wrist, and said, "Cripple him." The five-clawed golden dragon immediately rushed out, and like a golden arrow, it pierced through Hong Yi's qi. Ah! With a miserable howl, blood suddenly spurted out. At the same time, the five-clawed golden dragon waved its claws, and a divine barrier appeared, sealing off the cave. This way, no matter how much noise was made inside the cave, the outside world would not hear it. Hong Yi felt the dragon might of the five-clawed golden dragon, and even forgot to howl. He stared at the golden dragon with a pale face. There was actually a five-clawed golden dragon beside this person. Let me kindly remind you, not only is it a five-clawed golden dragon, it is also a beginner-level Immortal Realm expert. Madman retreated to the side, leaned against the wall, and looked at Hong Yi playfully. What? Beginner-level Immortal Realm? Hong Yi's body and mind trembled. The five-clawed golden dragon said contemptuously, "This emperor has never seen someone as stupid as you, actually daring to come and threaten us." Hong Yi was terrified and roared, "Li Bu'er, think carefully. If you dare to kill me, my friend will definitely find Lord Ancestral Dragon. Even now you're still threatening me. Calling you an idiot is already praising you. If I'm not wrong, your friend is now in your space divine object." Qin Feiyang laughed. "You?" Hong Yi looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. "Do you want to say, how would I know? Actually, this is very simple. Because even if your friend went to find the Ancestral Dragon, that's just a one-sided story. Would the Ancestral Dragon believe it? Of course not. So, you must get evidence before you can really threaten me in the future. If you want to get evidence, you must get close to me. How can you get close to me? Of course, by hiding in your space divine object. You are outside, deliberately provoking me and making me say the reason. This way, the friend hiding in your space divine object can use the image crystal to record it without anyone knowing. Am I right?" Qin Feiyang laughed. Chapter 2497. When Hong Yi heard these words, he slowly collapsed to the ground. "Who the hell is this person?" He said all this, as if he had seen it with his own eyes. "These little tricks of yours are all left over from us. Call that friend of yours out." Qin Feiyang said lightly, "You'd better not mess around. Otherwise, I'll have that friend of mine spread the recording of our conversation." Hong Yi roared, "You want to fight to the death?" Qin Feiyang smiled coldly, and looked at the five-clawed golden dragon. The five-clawed golden dragon understood, and forcibly pulled Hong Yi's space divine item out of his body. Then, the five-clawed golden dragon waved its claws, and the space divine item shattered. After the space divine item shattered, a middle-aged man in black rolled out in a sorry state. In his hand, he was holding an image crystal. The five-clawed golden dragon stepped forward, and smashed the image crystal with its claws. "Now what can you use to threaten me?" Qin Feiyang looked at Hong Yi with a smile. Hong Yi's eyes were filled with despair. The middle-aged man in black also looked miserable. His cultivation was about the same as Hong Yi's. Facing the five-clawed golden dragon, he was like an ant facing an elephant. If you had spread the recorded video at the beginning, it would have been spread in the Dragon God Palace by now. Unfortunately, you were too greedy and wanted to use this video to threaten us. Of course, you definitely didn't expect that I would be able to guess that he was hiding in your space divine item. Qin Feiyang looked at Hong Yi and smiled. The middle-aged man in black immediately said, "Li Bu'er, this has nothing to do with me. He instigated me. Let me go." "What nonsense are you talking about? You were the one who suspected him first, and you even came up with the idea to let me test him." Hong Yi immediately glared at the middle-aged man in black. "You're slandering me. Li Bu'er, you have to believe me. I was really instigated by him. Don't worry, I won't mention this to anyone. Please be magnanimous and let me go." The middle-aged man in black was lying on the ground crying and begging. "Cripple him as well." Qin Feiyang looked at the five-clawed golden dragon and said, The five-clawed golden dragon waved its dragon claw, and a streak of divine power instantly entered the black-clothed middle-aged man's chi. Ah! The middle-aged man let out a blood-curdling scream. His face was filled with fear. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and sent the two of them to the castle. He then transmitted his voice to Fire Lotus. Don't let them die too quickly. Understood. Fire Lotus responded. Qin Feiyong smiled and opened an altar. He turned to Madman and said, Senior brother, let's go. The five-clawed golden dragon coiled around Qin Feiyong's wrist. The madman waved his hand and sent Qin Feiyong into the spatial divine item before stepping onto the altar. Whether it was the madman or Qin Feiyong, this was just a small interlude. In a huge stone room, Qin Feiyong stood in the center and looked around. The stone room was very large, at least a few 100 feet. Not only were there all kinds of furniture, there were also some small green potted plants. After knowing each other for so long, this was the first time Qin Feiyong came to the madman's spatial divine item. The ground was also extremely clean. Suddenly, Qin Feiyong looked at the four walls. He discovered that there were actually many tightly shut stone doors. Could it be that there was more than one space? Qin Feiyong curiously walked in front of a stone door and pushed it hard, but found that he couldn't open it. He walked to the other stone doors and tried, but he couldn't open them either. Not simple. He already knew that the madman's spatial divine item was definitely not ordinary. Now that he saw it, it was indeed so. But what was behind these doors? Shwa. Suddenly, Qin Feiyong's vision blurred, and in the next moment, he appeared on top of a mountain. Qin Feiyong curiously looked at the madman beside him and asked, Senior brother, what level is your spatial divine item? You want to know? The madman said. Yes. Qin Feiyong nodded his head. I won't tell you. The madman laughed in ridicule. Qin Feiyong helplessly sent the madman to the castle, then opened an altar and jumped up. Black Tortoise Mountain. At this moment in a valley, a group of people gathered together, their eyes filled with anticipation. The valley was huge. There were also many people, estimated to be more than 1,000. But when more than 1,000 people gathered together, there was no noise at all. It was extremely quiet. At the front, Li Changhe, Wang Daoyuan, and Jiang Dafei stood together, all of them silent. Shua. Suddenly, a figure descended in the sky above the valley. At this moment, everyone raised their heads in unison and looked at that figure. Greetings, young lord. Greetings, young master. Jiang Dafei and the other two immediately bowed. He is the young lord. The others looked at Qin Feiyong suspiciously. Qin Feiyong glanced at the crowd and took a facial restoration pill, restoring his true appearance. It's the young lord. It's exactly the same as what the divine general said. Greetings, young lord. After seeing Qin Feiyong restore his true appearance, the group of people knelt down and kowtowed. Get up. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. Yes. Everyone got up and looked at Qin Feiyong curiously. They were no stranger to the name Qin Feiyong, but it was the first time they saw him in person. This was a bit different from the young lord they imagined. The young lord in their imagination was the kind of person who was unapproachable, cold, and ruthless. But now, the young lord standing in front of them looked very gentle, without any arrogance or coercion. Young master, this is for you. Li Changhe and the other two flew in front of Qin Feiyong. Wang Daoyuan took out the twin dragon pendant and handed it to Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong put away the twin dragon pendant. When he gave the twin dragon pendant to Li Changhe and Wang Daoyuan, it was to prove that they were his subordinates. Now that they were here, he naturally didn't need the twin dragon pendant anymore. Qin Feiyong asked, how many people are there in total? Except for Fan Yunzhang, everyone is here. A total of 1,198 people. Li Changhe, with 1,198 people, including Fan Yunzhang and Jiang Dafei, there were exactly 1,200 people in total. As expected, there were spies of the Dragon Slayer Palace in the 1,200 cities in the north. But Qin Feiyong knew that this was not all. There must be people of the Dragon Slayer Palace hiding in the major cities. It was just that these people usually hid in the city or in the wilderness, and no one knew about them. How's your cultivation? Qin Feiyang asked. Jiang Dafei said. Between the half-step supreme and the perfected ninth heaven state. Qin Feiyang nodded, looked at the 1,198 people below, and said with a smile, It's been hard on you to hide in the major cities all these years. It's not hard at all. As long as we can destroy the dragons, it's worth sacrificing our lives. The people below immediately roared. I don't agree with that. The dragons must be destroyed, but you have to live. I, Qin Feiyang, will never do a deal that kills 1,000 enemies and loses 800 of my own men. You have to protect yourselves even more if you follow me. I don't want anyone to sacrifice themselves for the Dragon Slayer Palace. For me, Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Yes. Everyone bowed in response, and their hearts were filled with warmth. No one had ever cared about them so much. How lucky. They had met such a benevolent and righteous young lord. Okay, let's get down to business. I believe Li Changhe and the others have also told you my rules. Qin Feiyang said. We're willing. Everyone bowed. Qin Feiyang smiled and began to make seals with both hands. Slave seals quickly appeared and swept toward the heads of more than 1,000 people. After about a few hundred breaths, the slave seals were finally completed. Qin Feiyang asked with a smile, I control you. Do you have any complaints? No. The group of people didn't hesitate at all, and answered very straightforwardly. Since you're willing to follow me, I definitely won't treat you badly. I won't ask for your names. After all, there are too many people. I might not be able to remember all of them. But I promise you here that when I succeed and retire, I will return your freedom. Also, no matter who it is, as long as you reach the perfected paragon or the 9 heavens stage, I will help you open the door of potential. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. The door of potential. Everyone was wild with joy when they heard this. This was something they had never expected at all. It was simply a great fortune. Qin Feiyang turned to Jiang Dafei and the other two and said, Count how many perfected paragon and perfected paragon gods there are now. Then, Qin Feiyang entered the Black Tortoise realm and looked at Fire Lotus. Immediately prepare the Yin-Yang Chaos Divine Pills for me, as well as all kinds of medicinal herbs to open the door of potential. The more the better. Okay. Fire Lotus nodded. Outside the valley. Come. Perfected paragon and perfected paragon gods, step forward. Jiang Dafei looked at the crowd below and said. Immediately, figures walked out one after another. There were men and women, old and young. Jiang Dafei said again. Perfected paragon gods, stand on the right. Perfected paragon gods, stand on the left. The group of people walked to the left and right. It was very orderly. There was no disturbance at all. Soon, the people on both sides stood in place. Jiang Dafei and the other two counted. There were 150 perfected paragon gods. There were 300 perfected paragon gods. A total of 450 people. Then, the three of them reported this matter to Qin Feiyang. Although Qin Feiyang was in the castle, he could clearly hear the voices outside. Outside, time passed breath by breath. About 10 breaths later, Qin Feiyang appeared in the sky above the valley again. He looked extremely haggard. In his hand, he was holding a Qianquan bag. Give them the Yin-Yang Chaos Pills, and help them open the door of potential. Qin Feiyang threw the Qianquan bag to Jiang Dafei and the other two. The three of them took the Qianquan bag and looked down. They were shocked. How could he refine so many pills so quickly? Right. There was a time array in the castle. A day outside was 100 years inside. Although only a few breaths had passed outside, a long time had passed inside the castle. And refining these pills continuously had indeed exhausted Qin Feiyang. It's actually a divine pill. I didn't expect young lord to be able to refine divine pills. When they saw the pills that Li Changhe and the other two took out, they were all extremely shocked. Now you know how powerful young lord is. Jiang Dafei smiled and said, All of you, come up and receive your Yin-Yang Chaos Pills. The perfected paragon gods and perfected paragon gods flew up one after another and received a Yin-Yang Chaos Pill. These Yin-Yang Chaos Pills can raise your cultivation by 1 minor level. If you're lucky, it might even raise your cultivation by 2 minor levels. Qin Feiyang smiled. Raise your cultivation to the Paragon God level? There's still a possibility of increasing by 2 minor realms. Thank you, young lord. The 450 people immediately bowed and thanked him. The other hundreds of people naturally looked envious. Don't worry. When you break through to the perfected Paragon God level, you'll all have them. As for the people of the Empyrean realm, the young lord said earlier that he would also help you open the door of potential. Li Changhe smiled. When the hundreds of people heard this, their eyes were filled with anticipation. Chapter 2498. Looking at everyone's reaction, Qin Feiyang was also very satisfied. The first step of winning people's hearts had basically been achieved. Qin Feiyang looked down at the 5-clawed golden dragon on his wrist and said with a smile, "Set up a barrier." After all, Black Tortoise Mountain was outside Holy Dragon City, and there were many fierce beasts nearby, as well as some people who were training. When everyone broke through later, it would definitely cause a big commotion. So, he had to set up a barrier to isolate the commotion. Hearing this, the 5-clawed golden dragon soared into the sky and turned into 100 feet long. Divine power surged out, and a barrier suddenly appeared, covering the entire valley. Divine dragon! It's a 5-clawed golden dragon. Everyone was dumbfounded. Even Li Changhe and the other two were shocked. When did the young master subdue a 5-clawed golden dragon? It's a companion that has just followed me not long ago. It has a basic immortal realm cultivation. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Basic immortal realm. Everyone's eyes trembled. This young master was indeed a dragon among men. Even a basic immortal realm 5-clawed golden dragon was under his command. Let's begin, Qin Feiyang said, then sat cross-legged in the void and closed his eyes to rest. The 450 people also took the yin and yang chaos pills one after another. Boom! After a while, waves of aura burst out uncontrollably. A group of people broke through one after another. There was no doubt that the 300 perfected immortals had all broken through the shackles of the 9 heavens realm. As long as they opened the door of potential, they could break through to the half-step 9 heavens realm. However, only 30 or so of the 150 perfected immortals were lucky enough to soar all the way to the perfected immortals and break through the shackles of the 9 heavens realm. As for the remaining 100 or so people, although they were a bit unlucky and didn't break through the shackles of the 9 heavens realm, they were all perfected immortals. Next, of course, it was to help these people open the door of potential. The 5-clawed golden dragon released its pressure. The doors of potential of the 450 people were opened one after another. Those who could enter the Dragon Slayer Palace had extraordinary willpower. Halfway through, they only rested for a short while. About half an hour. The 450 people had broken through the ultimate immortal realm. Looking at the potential mark on their chests, they were all incoherent with excitement. Following closely, everyone looked at Qin Feiyang, who was recuperating with his eyes closed. Their eyes were filled with gratitude. All of this was given to him by the young lord. In the future, the young supremacy would be their sky. Whatever the young supremacy told them to do, they would do. The remaining few hundred people clenched their fists tightly. In order to unlock the door of potential, they had to work hard in their cultivation from now on. Sir, it's done. Li Changhe walked up to Qin Feiyang and respectfully handed the Qianquan bag to Qin Feiyang. There were still many pills left inside. Qin Feiyang opened his eyes, and the fatigue between his brows disappeared. He glanced at the Qianquan bag and smiled faintly. Give it to Jiang Dafei. In the future, if you need it, go to him. Thank you, young lord. Those who hadn't unlocked their potential bowed and thanked him. It turned out that the young master had already refined the elixirs they needed. Hearing this, Li Changhe handed the Qianquan bag to Jiang Dafei and reminded him, Brother Jiang, the pills inside are priceless. Take good care of them. Don't worry. I'll protect these pills with my life. Jiang Dafei said solemnly. That's too exaggerated. But there's no certainty. If these pills are exposed to the world, it won't be good for you. Qin Feiyang smiled. Jiang Dafei was slightly stunned, then shook his head and smiled bitterly. That seemed to be the case. Apart from the yin-yang chaos pill, The rest of the pills were all for unlocking the door of potential. Once exposed, one could imagine what kind of disaster it would bring. Thinking of this Qingquan bag was still a hot potato. Qin Feiyang looked at the three of them and said, "Now tell me, how many city lords have been replaced?" The three of them were stunned and looked at Qin Feiyang, looking a little nervous. Qin Feiyang frowned. "Don't tell me that you haven't taken action after so long. Please forgive me, sir. We really haven't taken action yet, because we've been contacting everyone during this period. Although you gave us the list, the north is too big after all. Moreover, we have to find and confirm one by one. It really took a lot of effort." The three of them lowered their heads. Qin Feiyang frowned. Jiang Dafei said, "Young lord, don't worry, we'll start the plan later and complete the task as soon as possible." "Then what plan do you have?" Qin Feiyang asked. The three of them stiffened and shook their heads. "Not yet," Qin Feiyang said. "Not yet, or can't you think of the most appropriate plan? Nothing can escape young master's eyes. Indeed, we can't think of the most appropriate plan." Wang Daoyuan smiled bitterly. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and said, "Then tell me about the plans you originally thought of." "The first step of replacing the city lords is to kill the current city lords. The second step is to find a way for those present to take the position of city lord. But compared to the second step, the first step is more difficult. Because there are too many people, if the city lords die one after another, then no matter how careless the dragons are, they will see through it. And if we take it slow and spend hundreds or thousands of years, it will be too much of a waste of time." The three of them said, "That makes sense." Qin Feiyang nodded and said, "Then we can create all kinds of accidents. If the city lords die one after another, it shouldn't attract too much attention. That won't work. Once or twice can be an accident, but if it happens too many times, it won't be an accident anymore. The problem we are most worried about is that once the dragons notice, it will affect our overall plan. Or even fail." "Li Changhe," Qin Feiyang nodded and said, "This matter really can't be noticed by the dragons." Li Changhe sighed. "That's why we haven't been able to find the most suitable way." Wang Daoyuan and Jiang Dafei also looked like they couldn't make up their minds. Looking at the three of them, Qin Feiyang lowered his head and pondered. Jiang Dafei and the other two looked at each other, then looked at Qin Feiyang. "Sir is resourceful. He should be able to think of the safest and most efficient way." A moment later, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and with a wave of his hand, Hui, Fire Lotus and Feng Daji appeared. The three of them looked at Qin Feiyang with a puzzled expression. Qin Feiyang looked at Feng Daji and said, "How long will it take for your divine body to recover?" Feng Daji said, "It will take a while." "That doesn't matter. Go to the various city lords' mansions. With the strength of your divine soul, no one can stop you." Qin Feiyang laughed. Fire Lotus looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion and asked, "Qin Dage, do you have a plan?" Five-clawed golden dragon, you and Li Changhe go together. Hui, you and Wang Daoyuan go together. Fire Lotus, you and Jiang Dafei go together. Feng Daji, you come with me. We will split into 4 groups and loot the medicinal fields of the various city lords' mansions as fast as possible. Of course, we will also kill the city lords of the various city lords' mansions." Qin Feiyang said. "So blatant." Everyone looked at each other. "That's exactly what we need to do. That way, the dragon clan will think that our target is the herb field, and not those city lords." Qin Feiyang laughed. "So that's how it is. On the surface, we are looting the medicinal fields, but in the dark, we are killing the current city lords. At that time, even if the city lords are all dead, the dragons will only think that they were killed by us when they were guarding the medicinal fields. Although it will cause a big sensation, it can cover our true purpose." "Sir is indeed sir, to be able to think of such a wonderful plan. This subordinate admires you." Li Changhe cupped his hands and smiled. Wang Daoyuan, Jiang Dafei, and more than 1,000 people below also had a look of admiration. Qin Feiyang looked at Li Changhe and the other two and asked, "You are only responsible for leading the way. The three of you have the coordinates of the rest to Fire Lotus cities, right? Hui, and the 5-clawed golden dragon." Qin Feiyang said. Li Changhe and the other two nodded. Qin Feiyang looked at the crowd below and smiled. I also need someone to lead the way. Who knows the coordinates of all the cities? Me. Me too. Young lord, I also know. Dozens of people below raised their hands and shouted. Qin Feiyang glanced at the dozens of people, and finally looked at a black-clothed man and said, You. This man was at the peak of the 9 heavens realm, and could be of help. The man flew in front of Qin Feiyang and bowed. Subordinate Lei Bing greets young lord. Which city are you from? Qin Feiyang asked. Lei Bing said, Serpent City. Serpent City? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback and muttered. It sounds familiar. Young lord, Serpent City is as famous as Holy Dragon City. It is one of the 3 largest cities in the north. Jiang Dafei said. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization. When the princess and the patriarch of the dragons pretended to be Lin Yi and her disciple, and looted the treasure vaults of various cities, they also looted Serpent City. So, he had also heard of this city. Well, take Feng Daji and me to Serpent City. Qin Feiyang smiled. Yes. Lei Bing nodded respectfully. Qin Feiyang turned to look at Fire Lotus, Hui, and the 5-clawed golden dragon, and said with a smile. Then let's get started. After we are done, we will meet here. Remember to kill those messengers. In this way, the people of the City Lord's mansion will not be able to contact the dragons immediately, and we will have plenty of time. Hui laughed. I haven't encountered such a fun thing in a long time. Wang Daoyuan, let's go. Then let's go to Snow Dragon City. Wang Daoyuan smiled, changed his appearance slightly, and opened an altar. Snow Dragon City, Serpent City, and Holy Dragon City were the 3 largest cities in the north. As soon as the 2 left, Li Changhe looked at the 5-clawed golden dragon and said with a hoarse smile. Then let's go to Sun Moon City. Whatever. Anyway, they are just ants. The 5-clawed golden dragon said proudly. Qin Feiyang looked at the 5-clawed golden dragon and said, You also have to change your appearance. Chapter 2499. Why? The 5-clawed golden dragon asked. You'll follow me to the Dragon God Palace in the future, so you can't reveal your true identity. Qin Feiyang said. All right. The 5-clawed golden dragon nodded and transformed into a human. Then his divine power condensed into a mask and he put it on his face. Li Changhe also changed his appearance. He activated an altar and left with the 5-clawed golden dragon. As soon as the 5-clawed golden dragon left, the barrier around the valley disappeared. Jiang Dafei also took a phantom elixir and changed his appearance slightly. He looked at Fire Lotus and said with a smile, Miss Fire Lotus, let's go to Star Cloud City. Okay. Fire Lotus nodded. After Fire Lotus and Jiang Dafei left, Lei Bing also took out a phantom elixir and changed his appearance. After all, he had to stay undercover in Serpent City in the future, so he couldn't reveal his true identity. It was because of this that Jiang Dafei had changed his appearance. As for Li Changhe and Wang Daoyuan, they had appeared in the Dragon God Palace, so they couldn't show their true faces. Otherwise, everyone would know that Li Bu-er in the Dragon God Palace was Qin Feiyang. After that, Lei Bing also opened an altar. Qin Feiyang jumped onto the altar with Feng Daji. He looked at the more than 1,000 people below, and said with a smile, Build a contract bridge with each other, so that you can contact each other in the future. Then, go back to your respective cities immediately, but don't go back to the City Lord's mansion, in case you get hurt. Yes. A group of people bowed and answered. Lei Bing also jumped onto the altar. This young master is really bold. Yes. Only the young master would dare to think of such a bold plan. And only the young master would dare to do it. After Qin Feiyang and the other 2 left, the more than 1,000 people sighed. Last time, In order to deal with Qin Feiyang, the dragons looted the treasure vaults of all the cities in the north. This time around, Qin Feiyang could be said to be giving him a taste of his own medicine. One could imagine, when the dragons received the news, their faces would be ugly. Serpent City. There was a sea of people and endless streams of horses and carriages. It seemed incomparably prosperous and lively. The city lord's mansion, which was located in the center of the city, was naturally heavily guarded. At this moment, behind the city lord's mansion, above a medicinal field, 3 figures appeared out of nowhere. They were none other than Qin Feiyang, Feng Daji, and Lei Bing. Qin Feiyang shook his head and looked at Feng Daji. Feng Daji waved his hand, and a divine sense shot out, blasting downward. With a loud bang, an enchantment appeared above the medicine field, and the enchantment shattered. Without another word, Qin Feiyang immediately released his divine power and poured it into the ground below the herb field. Rumble! The entire herb field was uprooted, including the crystal vein and the spirit vein below. Who is it? This commotion immediately alerted the people in the city lord's estate. A black-clothed old man took the lead and rushed into the back mountain. But when he saw that it was Qin Feiyang and Feng Daji, his face suddenly changed. This was because the two of them had not changed their appearances yet, and Qin Feiyang wanted to cause a sensation. Needless to say, Feng Daji used to be a servant of the dragons, so the dragons naturally knew him. How dare you rob the herb field of the Serpent City again? And this Feng Daji, didn't he explode himself? Why is he still alive? The black-clothed old man was both shocked and angry, but he didn't dare to go forward. Not only did they not dare to step forward, they fled for their lives in fear. Feng Daji turned around and looked at the black-clothed old man, who had just reached the 9th heaven state. A divine sense shot out, and the black-clothed old man died on the spot. The next moment, he returned to his true form, which was a black dragon, and fell to the ground with a thump. Soon, another group of people rushed into the back mountain. The leader was a middle-aged man in a purple robe, who looked quite majestic. He is the city lord of the Serpent City. The people behind him are basically the dragon's minions. They all deserve to die. Lei Bing said to Feng Daji. Die, Feng Daji said coldly, and a divine sense rushed towards the group of people like a tide. It's Qin Feiyang. Run! The city lord roared. But before he could finish, the divine sense had already arrived. Along with a series of screams, the group of people died, and blood splashed in the sky. At the same time, Qin Feiyang put the herb field into the black tortoise realm, looked at the blood mist in the sky, and said with a smile, "Let's go to the next city." Yes. Lei Bing opened another altar, and then the 3 of them left without looking back. Did you hear the commotion at the city lord's mansion? Something seems to have happened. I can faintly hear some screams. What is going on? At this moment, everyone in the Serpent City was looking at the city lord's mansion, their eyes full of shock. The guards of the city lord's mansion heard the commotion and rushed to the back mountain in shock. When he saw the looted medicinal field, when he saw the black dragon's corpse, when he saw the ground full of dismembered corpses and severed limbs, he immediately turned pale. What's going on? Who robbed the herb field? Who killed the messenger of the dragons and the city lord? The news quickly spread in the Serpent City, causing a huge uproar. At the same time, Snow Dragon City, Sun Moon City, and Star Cloud City were also boiling, because the city lord's mansions of these 3 cities were also robbed. The messenger of the dragons and the city lord were also killed. I saw it, it's Hui. That's right, it's Qin Feiyang's accomplice. It's him who robbed the herb field of Snow Dragon City and killed the city lord and the messenger of the dragons. Oh my god. Why would he suddenly do such a thing? He's crazy. I saw it too. It's a masked woman who robbed the herb field of Star Cloud City. She's too powerful. The city lord, the messenger of the dragons, and the guards are as weak as ants in front of her. An unprecedented storm unfolded in the north. All the cities were talking about it. Whoosh! Above a certain city, accompanied by a terrifying aura, a golden-robed man wearing a mask descended in the sky above the city lord's mansion. Die, all of you! After robbing the herb field, The man in the golden robe shouted coldly, and divine power surged out and blasted into the city lord's mansion. Boom! The entire city lord's mansion was turned into ashes in an instant. How cruel! Li Changhe shook his head. That's right. The man in the golden robe was the five-clawed golden dragon. Let's go. The five-clawed golden dragon said coldly. Li Changhe nodded and opened an altar. After the two left, the city was in an uproar. Who are they? I heard that they've robbed more than one city lord's mansion. The news finally reached the Dragon God Palace. What did you say? The white-clothed woman looked at a disciple, who came to report with a face full of shock and anger. Lord Ancestral Dragon. It's true. The disciple said. Who is it? The white-clothed woman said in a deep voice. Huai, a masked woman and a masked man. And someone saw Qin Feiyang and Feng Daji with their own eyes. The disciple said. Feng Daji. Isn't he dead? The white-clothed woman was shocked. Back then, Feng Daji self-destructed in front of her. How could he still be alive? Could it be that he left behind a wisp of his divine soul before he self-destructed? This damn thing, the disciple said. And their cultivation seems to be very strong. How strong? The white-clothed woman asked. I'm not sure, but I heard that Huai, the masked woman, and the masked man are all in the imperishable realm. The disciple said. Qin Feiyang, you're simply lawless. The white-clothed woman was unable to restrain her anger. She waved her hand and said, I know you can leave now. Yes. The disciple respectfully responded, turned around and quickly left. The white-clothed woman took out an image crystal. Buzz! A blurry figure appeared. It was Longzuan. The white-clothed woman shouted. Lord Longzuan, something bad has happened. What's wrong? Longzuan frowned. Qin Feiyang, Huai, Feng Daji, and two masked men and women who jumped out of nowhere are wantonly looting the medicine fields of the various city lord mansions in the north. Our emissaries of the dragons were all killed by them. The white-clothed woman said. Naturally, she ignored the deaths of the various city lords. Huai looked at the blood-robed youth and chuckled. Blood dragon, ancestral dragon. Aren't you guarding the North Sea? What are you doing here? How dare you? Although the blood-red clothed youth looked young, there was a shocking murderous aura between his eyebrows. I already guessed that you would come, so I won't give you a chance. We'll meet again if fate wills it. Huai waved his hand, and the two figures completely disappeared. Damn it, damn it! The blood-robed youth roared. In the sky above another city, the five-clawed golden dragon, and Li Changhe also encountered an empty city. Li Changhe shook his head, and took out an altar. Buzz! But at this time, the image crystal rang. Li Changhe took out the image crystal, and Qin Feiyang's shadow appeared. I received a message from Huai that the blood dragon ancestral dragon has already arrived in the north. I believe that the other ancestral dragons have also arrived. Evacuate immediately, Qin Feiyang said. Ancestral dragon, the five-clawed golden dragon, and Li Changhe's expressions changed as they immediately revived the altar and returned to Black Tortoise Mountain. At the same time, Fire Lotus also received Hui's message. Black Tortoise Mountain. Several people appeared in the sky above the valley one after another. Qin Feiyang glanced at everyone and laughed. Everyone is back, not bad. It's a pity that we didn't kill them all. Lei Bing shook his head regretfully. Li Changhe sighed. There's nothing we can do about it. Wang Daoyuan looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Young master, we should have acted quietly at that time. Do you think that by acting quietly, you can kill all the city lords without anyone noticing? It will never be possible. There are so many people in the city lord's mansion. No matter how secretive we are, we will be exposed sooner or later. Huai said. Qin Feiyang laughed. Since we've already come this far, there's nothing to regret. Tell me about your results. He was already very happy that everyone had returned. Jiang Dafei said. Miss Fire Lotus and I have killed a total of 160 city lords. Wang Daoyuan followed. Lord Huai and I have killed a total of 175 city lords. Lord Golden Dragon and I have killed a little more. We killed a total of 190 city lords. Li Changhe laughed. There was no other way. The five-clawed golden dragon was too violent. More than us. Lei Bing was stunned. Then how many did you kill? Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two curiously. Lei Bing smiled bitterly. Young master, Lord Feng Daji and I killed 150 city lords. It's indeed a bit bad. Hui grinned. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. 150, 160, 175, 190. This added up to 675. Not to mention, this was a good result. There were 1,200 cities in the north. In other words, they had killed more than half of them. And this was not the main point. The main point was these city lords' mansions' herb fields. Let's go. To the Black Tortoise world. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and led the group into the Black Tortoise world. Above the Devil's Land, there were intact herb fields floating. These were the herb fields that Qin Feiyang looted. Crystal veins, soul veins, not a single one was spared. Qin Feiyang looked at Hui and the others asking, what about the herb fields you looted? Hui, Fire Lotus, and the five-clawed golden dragon looked at each other. With a wave of their hands, herb fields flew out from their chi seas one after another. For people who had reached their cultivation level, their chi seas could accommodate all things. So many? Li Changhe, Wang Daoyuan, Jiang Dafei, and Lei Bing stared at the herb fields, crystal veins and soul veins in a daze. Qin Feiyang smiled. It seems like there's no need to loot the Dragon God Temple's herb fields, soul veins and crystal veins. It's enough to cause earth-shaking changes to the Black Tortoise world. Fire Lotus nodded with a smile on her face. This was half of the northern region's crystal veins and soul veins, probably comparable to the north, west desert, south wasteland, and east tomb combined. And the Black Tortoise world's space was smaller than the north wasteland. One could imagine. With so many crystal veins and soul veins entering the Black Tortoise world, how big of a change would it cause? Other things aside, the current Black Tortoise world had definitely surpassed the Dragon God Temple. Qin Feiyang looked at Fire Lotus, smiling. Sorry to trouble you again. No problem. Fire Lotus smiled faintly, saying, Black Panther brothers, come out and help. Coming. The three Black Panther brothers ran out of the ancient castle. When they saw the herb fields, crystal veins and soul veins, they were all dumbfounded. Qin Feiyang turned to Lei Bing and Jiang Dafei, saying, You two go back first. If there's anything, contact me. Okay. The two nodded. Qin Feiyang took out the image crystal. After establishing the contract bridge, he sent the two out. Li Changhe asked, Young master, what about the remaining cities? I was just about to think about this. You two go and help Fire Lotus. I'll think about it alone. Qin Feiyang finished speaking and walked to the courtyard at the side. Feng Daji entered the ancient castle, continuing to reconstruct his body. The five-clawed golden dragon followed Qin Feiyang. As for Hui, he wandered around the herb fields alone. Help me brew a pot of tea. Qin Feiyang sat in the pavilion, looking at the five-clawed golden dragon and said, then lowered his head and pondered. Dragon God Mountain Range, above the plains. The white-clothed woman and the blood-red-clothed youth stood together, both silent and gloomy. Soon, accompanied by a few whistling sounds, another 4 people flew over. The white-clothed woman looked at the 4 and asked, How is it? One of them said, We didn't find a single person, but we counted that a total of more than 600 city lord mansions were looted. Damn it! The blood-red-clothed youth was furious. You just sent a message saying that you met Hui. Why did you let him escape? An old man looked at the blood-red-clothed youth and frowned. The blood-red-clothed youth said, They already guessed that we would appear, so they were already prepared. Why are these people so difficult to deal with? The others rubbed their foreheads. The blood-red-clothed youth said again. Also, this Hui actually knows that I'm guarding the North Sea? What? How did he know? The others were surprised. It's clear that they've already expected this, Li Tianlan said. I'm afraid not only me, but also the few of you guarding the Inland Sea, West Sea, South Sea, and East Sea, they also know. The blood-red-clothed youth said in a deep voice. I finally understand why Long Zun always said that Qin Feiyang is a bigger threat than the dragon-slaying palace. His mind is really frightening. To be honest, I really don't know what to do with this kid now. The white-clothed woman sighed. In fact, Old Hay and the other three should have unsealed the heaven-defying divine artifacts the last time we were here. Yes, if we had unsealed the divine artifacts at that time, although the North Sea and the divine Dragon Island would have been affected, at least we could have gotten rid of him and waited forever. But now, Old Hay and the other three have been killed, and they haven't condensed a complete divine soul yet. The most important thing is that the Sunset Divine Bow, the 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts, have also fallen into Qin Feiyang's hands. I'm afraid that the 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts have already surrendered to him. Otherwise, with their strength, they would have already killed their way out. The other 4 people also sighed. What's the point of saying this now? Hurry up and think. What should we do next? The blood-red-clothed youth said angrily, feeling a little restless. The white-clothed woman sighed deeply and said, "Let's ask Lord Longzun for advice." The other 4 people also nodded. Their minds were in a mess now, and it was hard for them to think of an effective solution. The white-clothed woman took out an image crystal. Buzz! Longzun's shadow appeared. "How is it?" Longzun asked. "We are useless. Please forgive us, Lord Longzun." The 6 people immediately knelt in the void. Longzun's body suddenly emitted a bone-piercing chill when he heard that. He said in a deep voice, "How many cities have been affected?" "More than 600. The white-clothed woman said truthfully. Longzun said angrily, "More than 600 cities, that's half of the North Sea." The 6 people trembled in fear, as if they were facing an abyss. Chapter 2501. Half of the North has been plundered. What are you guys doing? Longzun said angrily, "My lord, please forgive us." The 6 of them knelt in the air, looking terrified. They also wanted to kill Qin Feiyang and eliminate all future troubles. However, facing this person, they felt powerless from the bottom of their hearts. It was the same as when they faced Qin Batian. Thinking back, Qin Batian was the same as well. Although his cultivation was weak, he was like a loach that couldn't be caught. Why were the people of the Qin clan so difficult to deal with? It's not that they are difficult to deal with, it's because of the Celestial God Stone. Without the Celestial God Stone, they would have died many times over. Longzun snorted as if he knew what the 6 of them were thinking. "You're right." The 6 of them nodded. "They should still be moving. Go hide in the cities that haven't been plundered, and wait for them to come to us." Longzun shouted. "Yes." The blood-red-clothed young man and the other 4 answered respectfully. However, the white-clothed woman was still suspicious of him. Longzun looked at the woman in white and asked, "Do you have any objections?" "My lord, they have already plundered half of the north. The spirit veins, crystal veins, and herbs are enough for them to use for a lifetime. So I'm worried that they will stop here." The woman in white said. Longzun asked, "Then tell me, what should we do?" The woman in white froze. If she knew what to do, why would she send a message to Longzun? "Since you don't know what to do, then go quickly." Longzun snorted coldly, and the phantom immediately dissipated. The 6 of them sighed and stood up. The woman in white looked at the 5 of them and said, "Do you guys think they will make another move?" "I don't know. I believe that even Lord Longzun doesn't know. She told us to wait for them to come. She's probably just trying our luck." The 5 of them shook their heads. "All right, let's try our luck." The woman in white said helplessly. Why was Qin Feiyang more of a threat than Qin Batian? Although Qin Batian also had Heavenly Domain Magic Stone, he had always kept a low profile and rarely took the initiative to provoke the dragons. But Qin Feiyang was different. He would come out to make a fuss if he had nothing to do. Moreover, it was not a small matter. Every time, it would cause an uproar. When encountering such a situation, not to mention the arrogant dragon clan, no one would be able to take it. Therefore, for the dragons, Qin Feiyang was a problem that needed to be solved as soon as possible. The Black Tortoise World. Qin Feiyang sipped his tea and pondered. Fire Lotus, on the other hand, was busy with Wang Daoyuan, Li Changhe and He Bao. Qin Feiyang suddenly raised his head and looked at the 5-clawed golden dragon, who was standing respectfully at the side. He smiled and said, "Xiao Jin, don't just stand there. Sit down and drink tea with me." So, after thinking for a while, He also called Qin Feiyang young master like Li Changhe and Wang Daoyuan. As for the title of young lord, it was a title used by the people of the Dragon Slayer Palace, such as Jiang Dafei and Fan Yunzhang. And he wasn't from the Dragon Slayer Palace, but directly under Qin Feiyang's command, so it was a little inappropriate to call him young lord like Jiang Dafei and the others. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said with a smile, I have a plan. Listen to it, and see if it's feasible. Go ahead. The five-clawed golden dragon said. Logically speaking, Longzuan doesn't know our real purpose, so he should think that we won't take action again. After all, the herbs, crystal veins, and spirit veins that we looted this time are enough for us to use for a lifetime. So when the news passes, we can continue to take action. But we can't judge this kind of thing by common sense. Maybe the ancestral dragons are really waiting for us in one of the city lord's residences? So my plan is, just in case, I'll enter the inland sea and stall Longzuan and the ancestral dragons. You guys take the opportunity to go to other cities and kill those city lords. Qin Feiyang said. Hearing the first part, the five-clawed golden dragon was impressed. Young master was really thoughtful. However, when the last sentence was said, the five-clawed golden dragon god's face stiffened. Entering the inland sea to stall Longzuan and the ancestral dragons, wasn't that courting death? Actually, as long as the sunset divine bow and the other divine artifacts are willing to help, even if I enter the inland sea alone, I will be fine. Qin Feiyang smiled. The five-clawed golden dragon said, but the key is that they haven't really submitted yet. So, I have to talk to them again. Qin Feiyang smiled, picked up the teacup, raised his head and drank it, then got up and walked toward the castle. Is it that easy? The five-clawed golden dragon looked at Qin Feiyang's back and muttered to himself. Castle Hall. Qin Feiyang walked into the hall and looked at the sunset divine bow and the other divine artifacts. You don't have to say any more. We heard your conversation with the five-clawed golden dragon. I have to say, we really admire your courage. Before Qin Feiyang could speak, the sunset divine bow's artifact spirit said. You heard? Qin Feiyang was taken aback and smiled. All right, I don't have to say it again. What's your decision? The sunset divine bow's artifact spirit said. We can help you, but we have a condition. A trace of a smile appeared in Qin Feiyang's eyes as he asked. What conditions? No matter what the four divine artifacts' conditions were, he would agree. The sunset divine bow's artifact spirit said. Let us go to the origin source of the black tortoise world to cultivate. Origin source? Qin Feiyang was stunned. You want to go to the origin source to cultivate? Are you dreaming? But at this moment, the little boy appeared out of thin air and stood in front of Qin Feiyang, looking coldly at the four great divine artifacts. The sunset divine bow's artifact spirit said, If you don't let us go, we won't help Qin Feiyang. Sure. The little boy put his hands behind his back and said indifferently, Qin Feiyang, throw them out immediately. What? Qin Feiyang looked at the little boy in astonishment. The four great divine artifacts were something he had painstakingly left behind, and he actually wanted him to throw them out. Hurry up, the little boy urged. But Qin Feiyang looked a little anxious. The four great divine artifacts now knew all of his secrets. If they were allowed to return to the dragons, then the dragons would be even more unscrupulous when dealing with him in the future. And now, the dragons were at least a little afraid of the castle. The little boy said, Listen to me. Qin Feiyang looked at the little boy, then at the four great divine artifacts, and nodded helplessly. All right. The little boy immediately looked at the four great divine artifacts, his eyes full of ridicule. Qin Feiyang, you must think carefully. The sunset divine bow's artifact spirit said in a deep voice. As you can see, in the black tortoise world, this little brat is actually the biggest. I can't not listen to him. Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly and raised his hand. Seeing this, the sunset divine bow's artifact spirit hurriedly said, Don't, let's talk things over. Qin Feiyang was surprised. The sunset divine bow actually gave in? This was something he never expected. There was actually a day when the artifact spirit would compromise. Aren't you very arrogant? What's there to discuss? The little boy sneered. The Sunset Divine Bow's artifact spirit was silent for a long time, then said, "All right, this sovereign apologizes to you. That's more like it. Since you have a request, you should have the attitude of asking for help." A cold and arrogant smile appeared on the little boy's face. The Sunset Divine Bow's artifact spirit said helplessly, "Whatever you say. All right. I can let you enter the land of origin, but you have to be obedient in advance. Otherwise, even if the artifact spirit of the castle speaks up for you, it won't work." The little boy said indifferently. Although he looked like a porcelain doll, he was quite dignified. Wouldn't the Black Tortoise world be destroyed on the spot? Hui thought. After the Black Tortoise world and the ancient castle fused, its toughness is the same as the ancient castle. Even if he awakens, he might not be able to destroy the Black Tortoise world. Qin Feiyang transmitted. All right. Even if the Black Tortoise world isn't destroyed, what about the living beings in the Black Tortoise world? Hui asked secretly. Once the heaven-defying artifact displayed its full power, none of the living beings in the Black Tortoise world would be able to survive. Don't worry, I'm prepared. The Sunset Divine Bow and the other 3 heaven-defying artifacts are now in my qi. Qin Feiyang thought. They've already submitted? Hui was stunned. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. How did you do it? Hui asked in surprise. It has nothing to do with me. It was that little boy who wanted them to compromise. Qin Feiyang laughed secretly. This little brat is pretty good. Hui was speechless. To be able to subdue a heaven-defying artifact, he indeed had some ability. He transmitted. But I still feel that something isn't right. Why? Qin Feiyang didn't understand. Hui thought to himself. The might of a heaven-defying divine artifact is not something we can control. Even the Sunset Divine Bow and the others, who are also heaven-defying divine artifacts, would have to spend a great deal of effort to suppress it. Now that you mention it, it seems to make sense. Qin Feiyang nodded thoughtfully and said, but the Sunset Divine Bow and the others seem to be very confident. Of course they're confident, because they don't care about the life and death of the Black Tortoise world. If you don't believe me, you can ask them. They must be thinking that if this thing dares to act recklessly, they'll directly release the seal and suppress it. Releasing the seal and fighting 4 against 1, they can naturally suppress it. But you know the consequences better than me. Hui said inwardly. When Qin Feiyang heard this, he couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. There's no mistake. It must be like what Hui said. These heaven-defying divine artifacts were truly cold-blooded and heartless fellows. Luckily, he had called Hui over and had held back. Otherwise he really would have been impulsive and broken the chains. Hui transmitted again. The most important thing is that even if you do everything you can to suppress it, you still won't be able to completely control it. You will have to be on guard against it at all times. And in the end it will only be a problem. That makes sense. Qin Feiyang nodded. His words had really woken him up. When he heard the Sunset Divine Bow's artifact spirit say that it would help him subdue this thing, and when he thought about how he could obtain the help of another heaven-defying divine artifact, he had rushed over in a rush, not even thinking about these problems. Qin Feiyang stood in front of the gate of the ancient castle, glanced at the Devil's Land, and took out the image crystal. Buzz! Soon, a shadow appeared. It was Jiang Dafei. Qin Feiyang said, "Come to the Black Tortoise Mountain." Yes, Jiang Dafei respectfully replied, and immediately set off for the Black Tortoise Mountain. Qin Feiyang also sent a message to Lei Bing. After receiving the order, Lei Bing immediately opened the altar and rushed towards the Black Tortoise Mountain. Qin Feiyang put away the image crystal, closed his eyes, and extended his perception. Feng Daji was cultivating in the cultivation room. 3,000 years had passed in the ancient castle, and his physical body had yet to be reconstructed. This undead realm was indeed a big hurdle. Li Changhe and Wang Daoyuan were also cultivating. However, they were not in the ancient castle, but in the medicinal field of the Devil's Land. The two of them sat separately in the medicinal field, their auras stronger than before. Although they had not broken through to the 9th heaven realm, Their cultivation had improved a lot. The fire lotus was currently in the desert of death. As for Huai and the five-clawed golden dragon, the two of them were together, with their arms around each other's shoulders, eating, drinking, and playing in a restaurant. Sure enough, they are a match made in heaven. Qin Feiyang was speechless. Wait, where were the four heaven-defying divine artifacts? Why didn't he see them? Not in the ancient castle, not in the Devil's Land, not in the Netherworld Sea, soul-sealing valley desert of death. Strange. Qin Feiyang frowned, and continued to extend his perception. Soon, Qin Feiyang's eyes were filled with surprise. The Black Tortoise realm had become bigger than before. And this time, the change was particularly obvious. According to his estimation, the four sides of the Black Tortoise realm had expanded by at least 1,000 miles. In terms of diameter, it was more than 2,000 miles. If it continued to develop like this, he believed that it would not be long before the Black Tortoise realm size would be comparable to the northern region. If other places are like this Devil's Land, with a large number of spirit veins and crystal veins, the Black Tortoise realm's growth will be even faster. The little boy suddenly appeared beside Qin Feiyang and said, "Don't worry, there will be soon." Qin Feiyang smiled. The little boy was taken aback and asked, "Are you ready to act?" Qin Feiyang nodded. "Then let them help." The little boy waved his little hand, and the four heaven-defying divine artifacts suddenly appeared in the void in front of the two. And the axe and broken sword were also there. Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked at the little boy suspiciously. The little boy said, "Since the Sunset Divine Bow and the others have entered the land of Source, then naturally, we can't treat the axe and broken sword unfairly." Qin Feiyang asked, "So, they have been in the land of Source all these years?" The little boy nodded. "I really don't understand. What benefits will entering the land of Source do for them?" Qin Feiyang was puzzled. "See for yourself." The little boy pouted angrily at the 6 heaven-defying divine artifacts. Qin Feiyang looked at the 6 heaven-defying divine artifacts suspiciously. They were still the same as before. There was no change. Wait. Just as he was about to withdraw his gaze, he suddenly looked at the 6 heaven-defying divine artifacts again. There was a trace of surprise in his eyes. The aura of these 6 divine artifacts seemed to be, vaguely, a little stronger. But in the blink of an eye, it seemed that they had not become stronger. Was it an illusion? You can't believe it, right? In these 3,000 years in the land of Source, they have indeed become a little stronger. But this kind of strength is only a little bit, and it is difficult to notice. But it is undeniable that they are indeed becoming stronger. The little boy said, "How is this possible? Other than merging with the world, is there a way to make the heaven-defying divine artifacts stronger?" Qin Feiyang was shocked. "There are some things that you can't understand. Do your best. Sooner or later, the Black Tortoise world will become a great world that can stand shoulder to shoulder with the ancient world, or even surpass it." The little boy smiled and disappeared. "Surpass the ancient world," Qin Feiyang murmured, his eyes revealing a firm belief. "Yes, the Black Tortoise world will definitely reach this step." With a thought, Qin Feiyang, Huai Fire Lotus, Five-Clawed Golden Dragon, Li Changhe, Wang Daoyuan, and Feng Daji immediately appeared in front of Qin Feiyang. Outside, in the valley, Jiang Dafei and Lei Bing arrived one after another. Looking at each other, both of them were a little surprised. Jiang Dafei said with a smile, "It seems that the young lord has made a move again, otherwise he wouldn't have called both of us here." "Yes." Lei Bing nodded, glanced around and said, "Young lord, don't tell me that you have been in this Black Tortoise Mountain for the past month without leaving." "Maybe," Jiang Dafei said. Swish. Before his voice faded, Qin Feiyang appeared in the sky above the valley, with Fire Lotus and the others. "Sure enough, you have been in Black Tortoise Mountain all this time." The two looked at each other, immediately flew up and bowed. "I'll have to trouble you to lead the way again." Qin Feiyang looked at the two and smiled. The two hurriedly said, "This is what we should do." "All right then, the same old rules. Change your appearance and split into 4. The only difference is that I won't be traveling with you," Qin Feiyang said. "Qin Dage, where do you plan to go?" Fire Lotus looked at him suspiciously. Five-clawed golden dragon stared at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Chapter 2504. Don't worry. I'm just going to check if the ancestral dragons are lurking in the north. If there's danger, I'll leave immediately. Qin Feiyang smiled comfortingly. Instead, you're comforting us. Everyone was speechless. However, they didn't say anything more, because Qin Feiyang wouldn't change his decision because of them. He was such a person. Feng Daji suddenly said, Young master, I might have some problems here. What's the problem? Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. Feng Daji said, My body hasn't been rebuilt, so I don't have a sea of qi, so I can't accommodate those medicine fields. Qin Feiyang was taken aback, looked at Lei Bing and asked, Do you have a space divine object? Yes, but the space is very small. Lei Bing said. Qin Feiyang frowned. Suddenly, a figure appeared in his mind, and with a wave of his hand, Madman appeared out of thin air. What's wrong? Madman was suspicious. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Do me a favor, Feng Daji and Lei Bing don't have a large space divine object, so I'll accompany you. I see. Madman nodded and said, But you've been to my space divine object, and the space isn't big either. Can you stop pretending? Your space divine object isn't big, but what about behind those stone doors? It shouldn't be that simple. Qin Feiyang said. Madman raised the corner of his mouth and said, Okay, I'll accompany them. Anyway, I haven't had a good look around since I came to Divine Land. This isn't going shopping, we have to end it quickly. This time, you should do it secretly as much as possible, and try to kill all the remaining city lords at once. Qin Feiyang said. Jiang Dafei said. Then should we inform our people lurking in the various city lords' mansions, and let them leave first, so as not to hurt them? Yes, we need to inform them in advance. You guys send them a message one by one now, I'll go first. When you sense the aura of the heaven-defying divine artifact, you can start to act. With that said, Qin Feiyang activated a transmission altar. Qin Dage, bring the axe. Fire Lotus hurriedly took out the axe and handed it to Qin Feiyang. Bring the broken sword as well. Hua Yi waved his hand, and the broken sword flew towards Qin Feiyang. This, Qin Feiyang was taken aback. He smiled and said, You should keep it just in case. We're not in any danger, so why bring them along? And with you leading them, we can rest assured. Fire Lotus said. All right. Qin Feiyang nodded, put away the axe and broken sword, and stepped onto the altar without looking back. However, Fire Lotus was still very worried. All right. 4 heaven-defying divine artifacts have submitted, including the broken sword and axe. That makes 6 heaven-defying divine artifacts. Besides, he has the gate of space and time. Don't worry, he will be fine. Hua Yi laughed. I hope so. Fire Lotus muttered. At the same time, Jiang Dafei and Lei Bing took out the image crystal and sent a message to the people lurking in the city lord's mansion. At this moment, the sky was already bright, but the sky seemed a little dim. Thick dark clouds covered the sun, as if it was the eve of a storm. In the inland sea, the waves were rolling and the sound of the waves was deafening. Not far from the coast, a white figure descended on a mountain ridge. It was Qin Feiyang. He did not hide his identity, because he was here to be bait. If he hid his identity, it would not be of any use. Qin Feiyang stood in the sky and looked at the inland sea. Sea beasts could be seen everywhere, but not a single dragon could be seen. Let's just collect some blood, Qin Feiyang whispered. With blood, he would be able to activate the slaughter domain. Only by activating the slaughter domain would he have the ability to fight against the dragons. Although the sea beasts in the area near the Dragon God Mountain range were almost all killed last time, there was no lack of sea beasts in the sea area. After killing an area, a large number of sea beasts would soon come. As for blood, it could not be stored in the Devil's Land, because the entire Devil's Land was now planted with medicinal herbs. Qin Feiyang thought for a while and entered the Black Tortoise realm. At the end of the Netherworld Sea, he opened up a huge sinkhole to store blood. Whoosh! The waves were rolling and deafening. Clang! All of a sudden, a sword light tore through the sky and blasted into the sea. Roar! Immediately, whales were everywhere. The corpses of sea beasts continued to float to the surface of the sea. Blood dyed the sea red. Following closely, a young man in white, holding a purple gold broken sword, swept into the sea like a demon god. Wherever he went, the blood and sea beasts' corpses disappeared. The young man was even more unstoppable. Even the sea beasts of the peaked ninth heaven realm were like ants under the broken sword. In less than 100 breaths, the sea beasts within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles were killed without leaving a single one. The ancestral dragon hasn't come to find me yet. It seems that he's really hiding in the north. If that's the case, then I'll take the opportunity to collect more blood. The young man muttered. With a clang, a rusty axe appeared. This axe was also extremely terrifying. The rust on it seemed to have its own consciousness, emitting a colorful divine light. It looked like a group of beautiful butterflies, covering the sky and earth as they rushed into the deep sea. Roar! Roars and screams continued to resound from the bottom of the sea. At the same time, the broken sword also released tens of thousands of strands of sword chi into the sea. In the blink of an eye, the sea beasts within a radius of tens of thousands of miles were all killed. One by one, the corpses floated to the surface of the sea. Chapter 2505. Swoosh. Another 5 figures descended. It was the blood-red youth and the other 4. The 5 of them received the message and immediately rushed over. However, when they saw that the axe was recovering, their expressions changed drastically. The white-clothed woman said in a deep voice, "He wants to fight us to the death here." "What? Here? Bastard, don't go too far." The 5 of them immediately changed their expressions and glared at Qin Feiyang. "You're actually afraid? But it makes sense. Divine Dragon Island is in the center of the inland sea. If the seal of the heaven-defying artifact is undone here, I'm afraid that Divine Dragon Island will be destroyed before we even fight." Qin Feiyang sneered. "Don't threaten us with this. If we really fight, not only Divine Dragon Island, but the north, west, south, and east will also be destroyed. I don't believe that you can do such a thing." The blood-red youth snorted. Divine Dragon Island was in the center of the divine land. Therefore, if the seal of the heaven-defying artifact was undone here, a full-scale war would affect the entire divine land. Qin Feiyang said, "You're so confident that I won't do such a thing?" "Of course. Because you're Qin Beishan's descendant. To people like you, the common people of the world, are more important than your own life." The blood-red youth said, "Haha. I've said this a long time ago. Don't compare me with my ancestor. My ancestor is my ancestor, and I am me. I will do what my ancestor won't do. I dare to do what my ancestor won't do. I once slaughtered all the living beings on a continent in an instant. Why would I care about that?" Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. He looked at the axe and shouted, "Continue." Boom. The axe's aura became more and more terrifying. What kind of aura is this? It's so terrifying. At this moment, Divine Dragon City had been drowned by the axe's aura. The sky above the city was filled with people. They all looked in the direction of the inland sea with horror in their eyes. Outside the city, Black Tortoise Mountain. "This is the axe's aura." Huai and the others stood above the valley and looked in the direction of the inland sea. Their expressions were extremely solemn. "Don't worry about Qin Feiyang. Split into 4 groups and move out immediately. You must complete the mission within an hour." Huai retracted his gaze and looked at everyone. Everyone nodded. Fire Lotus took a deep breath and said, "Then let's go." Li Changhe, Wang Daoyuan, Lei Bing, and Jiang Dafei had already changed their appearances in advance. The 5-clawed golden dragon and madman also concealed their identities. As soon as Fire Lotus finished speaking, Li Changhe and the other 3 immediately took out the teleportation altar. After the altar was opened, a group of people stepped onto the altar with murderous intent. Inland sea. The wind howled and the waves surged. The sea beasts fled in terror, but in the end, all the sea beasts within a radius of tens of millions of miles were killed by the divine might of the axe. As far as the eye could see, it had turned into a sea of blood. When the 6 ancestral dragons heard Qin Feiyang's words, they fell silent. Indeed, although this child was the descendant of Qin Batian, his personality was different from Qin Baishan's. Because for Qin Batian, even the sea beasts wouldn't massacre so wantonly. What are you still hesitating for? I am standing in front of you, make your move. Qin Feiyang glanced at the surrounding sea, looking at the blood-stained seawater and the floating sea beasts' corpses. He felt as if there was a stabilizing needle in his heart. This blood, in addition to the blood collected before, was almost enough to open the third stage. The power of the third stage was comparable to unlocking the seal of a heaven-defying divine artifact. Therefore, even if the 6 ancestral dragons really made their move, he wasn't afraid. Of course, he couldn't really make his move, because it would implicate too many innocent creatures. Now, he just wanted to show his strong side and restrain the 6 ancestral dragons, to buy enough time for Hui and the others. But in the face of Qin Feiyang's clamor, the 6 ancestral dragons were indifferent. They were also sure that they didn't dare to start a war with Qin Feiyang here. The Divine Dragon Island was the foundation of the dragons, the ancestral land. It could be said that everything about the dragons was on the Divine Dragon Island. If the Divine Dragon Island was destroyed, then even if they killed Qin Feiyang, the dragons would suffer a great loss. Swish! All of a sudden, Qin Feiyang grabbed the axe and the broken sword, turned around and swept towards the sea ahead. Wherever he went, the blood and sea beasts' corpses disappeared. Stop him! The woman in white shouted. The thin sword in her hand flew out, cutting through the sky like lightning, slashing towards Qin Feiyang's back. Axe! Qin Feiyang shouted coldly. The axe also immediately flew out of his hand, chopping towards the thin sword. Clang! The two heaven-defying divine artifacts collided. The destructive aura suddenly swept in all directions. And at the same time, the separated rust quickly swept in front of Qin Feiyang, forming a colorful enchantment to protect Qin Feiyang. Because the destructive force of the collision of the two heaven-defying divine artifacts was not something that Qin Feiyang could withstand. If he didn't protect himself, he would be smashed into pieces in an instant. After the collision of the two heaven-defying divine artifacts, the thin sword was immediately sent flying back to the woman in white. After all, the thin sword had not been unsealed or awakened, so it was naturally no match for the axe. Swish! But at the same time, the young man in red and the other 4 moved together, surrounding Qin Feiyang in the middle. Qin Feiyang stared blankly. Just what was it that even Long Zun's attitude became so pious? At the same time, in the center of the inland sea, there was a huge island. The size of the island was comparable to the current black tortoise world. The mountain range was undulating, and the vegetation was lush. It was majestic and magnificent. In the center of the island, there was an especially tall mountain that was surrounded by clouds and mist. It was like a celestial mountain. As revered dragon's voice sounded, the celestial mountain suddenly erupted with a dazzling milky white divine light. At the same time, a mighty aura surged out like a torrent. Why did the sacred mountain awaken? Could it be that a strong enemy came to Divine Dragon Island? There were countless people on the island. They were all transformed from divine dragons. At this moment, they all rose into the air and looked at the celestial mountain on the island that was shining with divine light. Their eyes were full of surprise. And that mighty aura, and that milky white divine light also surged out in all directions with the sacred mountain as the center. Soon, the entire Divine Dragon Island was covered by the divine light. Then, the divine light condensed into a huge barrier that enveloped the entire Divine Dragon Island. But Qin Feiyang didn't know this. Because it was too far away, he couldn't see it. However, he could feel that vast and mighty aura. Under this aura, even with the axe and broken sword beside him to protect him, he couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end. It was as if a peerless fiend god was descending on this place. Qin Feiyang, you'll regret it. The sovereign divine realm has opened. Even if you want to escape now, it's too late. Today is the day you die. The 6 ancestral dragons stared at Qin Feiyang coldly. Sovereign divine realm. What exactly is this? Qin Feiyang was bewildered, looking at Divine Dragon Island again. After the giant barrier enveloped the entire island, The sacred mountain in the center of the island didn't stop. That milky white divine light surged out continuously, and with Divine Dragon Island as the center, it surged towards the inland sea in all directions. It was extremely fast. It swept across the sky. Finally, that divine light surged above Qin Feiyang and the others like a tide. Qin Feiyang looked up, and the bewilderment in his heart became even stronger. But that divine light didn't stop and continued to surge towards the coast. About 10 breaths later, boom! Accompanied by an earth-shaking loud sound, the divine light landed on the coast. The next moment, a super large barrier appeared out of nowhere. If one looked down from the sky, they would see a very shocking scene. This barrier enveloped the entire inland sea. Chapter 2506. The Dominator's Divine Realm, Qin Feiyang murmured. Looking at the barrier in the sky, an inexplicable sense of panic rose in his heart. The 4 sovereigns, 8 divine emperors, and 108 divine generals of the Dragon Slayer Palace are all stronger than you. But do you know why they don't dare to step into the inner sea? The white-clothed woman looked at Qin Feiyang and sneered. Qin Feiyang's heart sank. He asked, "Is it because of the Dominator's divine realm?" That's right. There are 2 barriers in the Dominator's divine realm. One covers Divine Dragon Island, and the other covers the entire inner sea. This is the foundation of the dragons. In this world, no one can break these 2 barriers. Not even a heaven-defying divine artifact with its seal unlocked. The white-clothed woman shouted. What? Even a heaven-defying divine artifact with its seal unlocked can't break this barrier? Qin Feiyang was shocked. This must be a joke. You're surprised, aren't you? But I don't think you've realized the point. Although the Dominator's divine realm exists to protect Divine Dragon Island and the inner sea, it's also a cage. Especially now that you're in the inner sea. You can't break into Divine Dragon Island or escape from the Dominator's divine realm. And now, even if your ancestors come, they can only stand outside the Dominator's divine realm and watch you die. Even your ancestors don't dare to step into the inner sea. Where did you get the courage to come here again and again? The white-clothed woman's eyes were full of contempt. The red-clothed youth and the other 4 also sneered. As for Qin Feiyang, other than shock, there was nothing else in his heart. The Dominator's divine realm. Even a heaven-defying divine artifact couldn't break it. How could there be such a terrifying barrier in the world? I don't believe it. Axe broken sword split it. Qin Feiyang shouted. Clang! The axe and broken sword attacked the barrier at the same time. Longzuan and the 6 ancestral dragons had no intention of stopping them. Their eyes were full of mockery. Boom! The 2 heaven-defying divine artifacts slammed into the barrier. However, the barrier didn't even budge, let alone break. How is this possible? Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. He shouted, "Release the seal completely." Clang! The axe trembled violently in the void, instantly releasing a destructive aura. The entire inland sea began to collapse and sink. All of the sea beasts were howling in pain. However, Qin Feiyang was unscathed under the protection of Sir Rust. Seeing this, the 6 ancestor dragons flew to Long Zun's side and took out their heaven-defying weapons to protect Long Zun and themselves. The internal sea had fallen into a calamity. The sea beasts continued to lose their lives. Clang! Once again, the axe chopped towards the enchantment. A loud bang sounded, but the enchantment was still the same as before. He had to break the sovereign divine realm and escape before Hui and the others finished their operation. Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang slowly closed his eyes. Are you so desperate that you want to give up resisting? We dragons rule the ancient world and hold great power. All living things must worship us. You dare to go against us dragons? You're courting death. The white-clothed woman coldly shouted. Looking at the snow-white thin sword in her hand, she shouted, "Release the seal." Clang! The thin sword trembled slightly, and a monstrous aura immediately erupted. Seeing this, the broken sword and axe uniformly blocked in front of Qin Feiyang. Under the control of the axe's artifact spirit, the multicolored rust condensed into a multicolored battle armor that covered Qin Feiyang's body. Qin Feiyang, I know that you must be a little flustered now. But you have to remember, the more dangerous it is, the calmer you have to be. The axe's spirit secretly shouted. Qin Feiyang still closed his eyes and turned a deaf ear. But if one looked carefully, the nervous expression between his eyebrows had calmed down a lot. We can't be idle. The blood-red clothed youth glanced at the white-clothed woman, turned his head to look at the other four, and laughed. Clang! A blood-red short blade appeared in front of him, and a monstrous evil aura suddenly surged out like a volcanic eruption. The other four looked at each other and smiled. Clang! 4 divine artifacts appeared at the same time. They were a brass shield, a 3-meter-long iron whip, a 3-foot-long black iron rod, and a bronze halberd. Release the seal. As soon as the 4 divine artifacts appeared, the 4 of them roared in unison. Clang! Clang! The 4 divine artifacts immediately shook in the void, and a thunderous sound was produced. Then, 4 streaks of terrifying divine might rolled out crazily in the sky above the sea area. Heaven-defying divine artifacts. 6 ancestor dragons, 6 heaven-defying divine artifacts. This was a terrifying lineup, and it could easily destroy the entire ancient world. Go to hell! The 6 ancestor dragons looked at each other and roared at the same time. The 6 heaven-defying divine artifacts immediately carried an aura of destruction, and they immediately attacked Qin Feiyang, the axe and the broken sword. At the same time, outside the boundary in the sky above, Long Zun appeared again, and beside him was a young man in a red robe. This young man looked to be in his 20s, and he was about 1.8 meters tall. Not only was he wearing a red robe, but his long hair was also like flames, dancing in the wind behind him. Is that him? The young man in the red robe looked at Qin Feiyang below, and asked with a smile. Yes. Long Zun nodded. Although it's my first time seeing him, it's not difficult to see that he's indeed a dragon among men. The young man in the red robe smiled.